When a millionaire discovered his quiet housewife was actually the missing heir to a criminal empire, it was already too late. Tonight you're about to witness the most savage revenge story you've ever heard. A tale of power, betrayal, and a woman who rose from the ashes of humiliation to become a queen. This isn't your typical revenge plot. This is about a ghost who came back to life and burned down everything that tried to bury her. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from. I want to see how far this story travels. The cake was melting. Evelyn sat at the head of the dining table, watching vanilla buttercream slide down 3 tiers of fondant like something dying in slow motion. 24 candles burned in the dimness. Their flames reflected in crystal she'd polished herself that morning. The chandelier overhead threw shadows across bone china and untouched champagne. 7 years. 7 years of this exact same scene, and Graham had never once made it home on time. Her phone said 12:43 a.m. The house was silent except for the grandfather clock ticking in the hallway and the distant hum of the refrigerator. She'd stopped crying around year 3, stopped calling around year 5. Tonight, she just sat there in a silk dress the color of old ivory, her hands folded in her lap like a good wife, like an obedient piece of furniture that knew its place. When the front door finally opened, she didn't move. Graham walked in carrying his briefcase and the unmistakable scent of someone else's perfume. Not expensive perfume, cheap, the kind you bought at department stores because you thought it made you smell like money, when really it just made you smell desperate. He didn't look at her, didn't acknowledge the candles or the cake or the fact that his wife had been sitting alone in the dark for 4 hours. He dropped his briefcase on the marble floor. "We need to talk," he said. Evelyn watched a candle gutter out. "It's our anniversary." "I know what day it is." "Do you?" Graham loosened his tie. He looked tired, looked like a man who'd been working up to this moment for weeks, rehearsing it in bathroom mirrors and during lunch breaks. "Evelyn, this isn't working." She said nothing. "You know it isn't working. We've been pretending for years." "Have we?" It wasn't a question. She said it flat, said it the way you'd acknowledge rain or traffic or any other inevitable inconvenience. Graham pulled an envelope from his inside jacket pocket. Legal-sized, crisp, the kind of envelope that changed lives. "I had my lawyer draw these up. It's fair, more than fair, actually. The house is paid off, and you'll get a settlement that should keep you comfortable." Evelyn looked at the envelope. "You're divorcing me. I'm setting us both free, on our anniversary." Graham had the decency to flinch, but it didn't last. "There's someone else, someone who—" He stopped himself, cleared his throat. "Celeste understands me. She's from the right kind of family. She has connections, ambition. She's going places. And I'm not. You're a good person, Evelyn. You've been a good wife. But let's be honest, you've never had any drive, any goals. You're content to just exist, and I need someone who wants more." The candles kept burning. Evelyn sat very still, her hands folded on the table, her face calm as glass. Inside her chest, something that had been sleeping for 7 years began to wake up. "Who is she?" Evelyn asked. "Celeste Whitmore. Her father owns Whitmore Capital, real estate development. I know who they are." Graham blinked. He'd never heard his wife talk about business before, never heard her mention anything beyond grocery lists and dinner reservations. Evelyn reached for the envelope, pulled it across the table, opened it without ceremony and scanned the first page. The settlement was insulting, barely enough to cover 6 months of rent anywhere decent. Graham had calculated her worth down to the penny and decided she was disposable. She picked up the pen he'd left on top of the papers. Graham watched her sign with something like relief bleeding across his face. He'd expected tears, screaming, broken dishes. Instead, his wife signed away 7 years of her life with the same clinical detachment she used to approve grocery deliveries. "That's it?" he said. Evelyn set down the pen. "What did you expect?" "I don't know. Something." "You want me to beg?" "No, I just—" Graham ran a hand through his hair. "I thought you'd put up more of a fight." Evelyn stood. The silk dress whispered against her skin as she walked past him toward the stairs. She stopped at the landing and looked back at the man she'd wasted 7 years trying to love. "When are you marrying her?" she asked. 3 months. We're doing it at her family's estate in the Hamptons." "Congratulations." Graham frowned. That's all you have to say? Evelyn smiled. It was a strange smile, soft and sad and somehow terrifying in its absolute stillness. What else is there? She went upstairs, locked herself in the bedroom, and pulled her phone from her purse. The number was still saved under a name she hadn't spoken aloud in 7 years. Her thumb hovered over the contact for a long moment. Then she pressed call. It rang 3 times. A man answered, voice like gravel and smoke. Evelyn? She closed her eyes. I'm coming home. Silence. Not empty silence, the kind that held weight, held history, held 7 years of unanswered questions. I'll send a car, he said. Send everything. The line went dead. Evelyn stood in the bedroom she'd shared with a man who'd never really seen her and started packing. Not everything, just enough. She pulled clothes from the closet, folded them mechanically, and stacked them in a single suitcase. No jewelry, no photos, nothing that belonged to the life she'd built here. Downstairs, Graham was pouring himself scotch in the study, probably texting Celeste, probably telling her it was done and he was finally free. He had no idea what he'd just set in motion. 53 minutes later, headlights flooded the circular driveway. Not one car. 5. Black SUVs rolled up the quiet suburban street like shadows given form, their engines purring in the dark. Graham heard them from the study. He went to the window and watched armed men step out into the cool night air. Men in dark suits with the kind of stillness that only came from military training or something worse. His hand went slack on the scotch glass. The lead vehicle's rear door opened. A man emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a black overcoat that made him look like he'd stepped out of a funeral or a hostile takeover. His face was sharp angles and controlled violence, the kind of face that didn't need to raise its voice to make people disappear. Lucien Moreau. Graham didn't know the name yet, but he would. Evelyn came down the stairs with her suitcase. She'd changed into black slacks and a simple cashmere sweater. No makeup, hair pulled back. She looked different. Looked like someone Graham had never met. Evelyn. He stepped into the hallway. What the hell is going on? Who are these people? She walked past him without answering. Evelyn? She stopped at the door, turned. You wanted to know who I am? What I want? Graham's face had gone pale. What are you talking about? You said I had no ambition, no goals. You said I was content to just exist. I didn't mean... You were right, Evelyn said quietly. I was content. I thought love was enough. I thought being small would keep me safe. She looked at him with eyes that were no longer soft, no longer willing to shrink for anyone. It didn't. She opened the door. Lucien was waiting at the bottom of the steps, rain beginning to fall in thin silver threads. He looked at Evelyn the way you'd look at something precious and dangerous that had been missing for too long. Mrs. Mercer, he said. DeLuca, Evelyn corrected. I'm done being a Mercer. Lucien's mouth curved, not quite a smile, something sharper. Welcome home, Evelyn. Graham stumbled onto the front porch, his expensive loafers slapping against wet stone. You can't just leave. We have paperwork to finalize, assets to divide. Lucien turned his head, didn't move his body, just turned his head and looked at Graham the way you'd look at an insect that had wandered somewhere it didn't belong. Mr. Mercer, Lucien said, voice flat as a blade, I suggest you go back inside. Who the hell do you think you are? One of the armed men shifted position, just shifted. Graham felt the threat like cold water down his spine. Evelyn touched Lucien's arm. It's fine, he doesn't know. Doesn't know what? Graham's voice cracked. Evelyn, what is this, some kind of... 7 years ago, Evelyn interrupted, I walked away from my family because I thought normal was better than powerful. I thought quiet was better than dangerous. She looked at Graham standing there in the rain, barefoot and confused and so utterly ordinary. I was wrong. She got into the SUV. Lucien followed her, the door closing with a sound like a vault sealing shut. The convoy pulled away in perfect formation, red taillights disappearing into the dark like dying embers. Graham stood alone in the rain, watching his wife vanish into a world he didn't know existed. Inside the lead vehicle, Evelyn stared out the tinted window as the suburbs melted away behind her. Lucienne sat across from her, silent, giving her space to breathe. "How long?" he finally asked. 7 years? 4 months? 16 days? You counted. Every single one. Lucienne leaned forward slightly. Did you love him? Evelyn's jaw tightened. I loved the idea of being normal. I loved the fantasy that I could walk away from everything and just be... She stopped, swallowed hard. Ordinary. You were never ordinary. No, she agreed. I was just very good at pretending. The SUV turned onto the highway, heading toward the city skyline burning gold in the distance. Manhattan. The real Manhattan. Not the tourist trap version or the corporate clean rooms where Graham played at Power. The hidden Manhattan. The one built underneath luxury hotels and political fundraisers and boardrooms where men in $10,000 suits made decisions that never appeared in newspapers. Your father asked about you, Lucian said. Every year on your birthday. Evelyn's hands tightened in her lap. What did you tell him? That you'd come back when you were ready. And if I never came back? Lucien's eyes were dark, unreadable. Then I would have waited. Something twisted in Evelyn's chest. Graham had given her 7 years of indifference disguised as marriage. Lucien had given her 7 years of silence disguised as freedom. One had been a cage. The other had been a choice. The city rose around them like a cathedral of glass and steel. The convoy navigated through streets slick with rain until they reached a high-rise in Tribeca. All black glass and private elevators and the kind of security that didn't ask questions. Evelyn stepped into the lobby and felt memory crash over her like a wave. She'd been here before. Years ago. Back when she was Evelyn DeLuca and the world bent around her last name like gravity. Lucien's hand pressed lightly against her lower back, guiding her toward a private elevator. They rode up in silence, the city shrinking below them until it looked like scattered diamonds on black velvet. The penthouse doors opened. Her father was waiting. Vincent DeLuca stood by the floor-to-ceiling windows, a glass of bourbon in his hand, his silver hair combed back from a face that had aged but not softened. He turned when she entered, and for a long moment they just looked at each other. Evie, he said quietly. She hadn't heard that name in 7 years. It hit her harder than she expected. Papa. Vincent crossed the room and pulled her into an embrace that smelled like cigar smoke, an expensive cologne, and every childhood memory she'd tried to bury. My girl, he murmured against her hair. My girl came home. Evelyn's throat closed up. She'd spent 7 years convincing herself she didn't need this. Didn't need family or legacy or anything except a quiet life with a man who'd never really wanted her. She'd been lying to herself the entire time. Vincent pulled back, his hands on her shoulders, studying her face like he was cataloging every change. You look tired. I am tired. Good. That means you're ready to stop running. He released her and moved back toward the windows. Lucien stood near the elevator, giving them space but not leaving. Always present, always watching. You know what you're walking back into, Vincent said. It wasn't a question. Evelyn nodded. I know. The engagement still stands, you and Lucien. That was the arrangement. I know, she said again. Vincent sipped his bourbon. You ran because you were scared of what it meant, of what you'd become. I ran because I was 19 and didn't want my life decided for me. And now? Evelyn looked at Lucien. He was watching her with an expression she couldn't quite read, something between patience and hunger, like he'd been waiting 7 years for her to make a decision he'd already made long ago. Now I'm deciding for myself, she said. Vincent smiled. Good, because tomorrow the vultures are going to start circling. Word's already spreading. The DeLuca daughter is back. Every rival family in 5 states is going to test us to see if you're still sharp or if 7 years of suburban housewife softened you up. Evelyn's eyes hardened. Let them test me. They will. And when they do, you can't hesitate, can't afford mercy. I remember how this works. Do you? Vincent set down his glass. Because the girl who left here 7 years ago wanted out. Wanted normal. Wanted safe. He stepped closer. That girl is dead, Evie. She has to be. You understand that? Evelyn felt something cold settle in her chest. Not fear, something worse. Clarity. I understand, she said. Vincent studied her for another moment, then nodded. You'll start tomorrow. Lucian's been managing the restaurant operations, but they need oversight, real oversight. Half the managers are skimming, the other half are incompetent. I want you to clean house. Restaurants? Evelyn almost laughed. Papa, You married a corporate finance man, spent 7 years watching him work. You think I didn't keep tabs on you? You learned how money moves, how legitimate business operates. That's exactly what we need. Evelyn glanced at Lucian. He gave her the smallest nod, confirming. Vincent wasn't punishing her. He was using her. All right, she said. I'll do it. Good. Lucian will bring you up to speed. Vincent kissed her forehead. Get some rest. Tomorrow, you go back to work. He left through a side door, his security detail materializing from shadows to follow him out. The penthouse fell quiet. Evelyn stood in the center of the massive living room, suddenly exhausted down to her bones. Your old room is ready, Lucian said. Same as you left it. You kept it? I kept everything. She turned to face him. Why? Lucian moved closer, not crowding her, just close enough that she could see the small scar above his left eyebrow, the one he'd gotten when they were 17 and someone had tried to kill her father at a restaurant opening. Lucian had been her bodyguard even then, had taken a bottle to the face protecting her. Because I knew you'd come back, he said simply. You couldn't have known that. I did. His hand came up, fingers brushing a strand of hair from her face. The gesture was gentle, careful, like she was something breakable. You don't belong in the suburbs, Evelyn. You never did. I tried. I know. I wanted to be normal. I know that too. Lucien's thumb traced the line of her jaw. But you're not normal. You're extraordinary, and that terrifies you. Evelyn's breath caught. It should terrify you too. It does, Lucien smiled. That's why I waited. He stepped back before she could respond, giving her space again. Always giving her space. Always letting her choose. Get some sleep, he said. Tomorrow, we remind this city who you are. He left her alone in the penthouse. Evelyn walked to the windows and looked out at the city sprawled below her like a living organism. Somewhere out there, Graham was probably celebrating his freedom with Celeste, probably already planning his new life, probably convinced he'd upgraded to something better. He had no idea what he'd lost. More importantly, he had no idea what he'd awakened. Evelyn pressed her palm against the cold glass and felt the city's pulse thrumming through steel and stone and shadow. 7 years ago, she'd walked away from this. From power. From legacy. From everything that made her dangerous. Tonight, she was taking it all back. And this time, she wasn't running from who she was. She was becoming it, downstairs, in a quiet suburban house surrounded by manicured lawns and sleeping neighbors. Graham Mercer sat in his study with a third glass of scotch and his phone in his hand. He'd tried calling Evelyn 6 times. Every call went straight to voicemail. He stared at the divorce papers on his desk, at Evelyn's signature drying in blue ink, and felt the first cold whisper of doubt creeping up his spine. Those men. Those vehicles. That man in the black coat who'd looked at him like he was already dead. Who the hell had he been married to? Graham pulled up Google on his phone, typed Evelyn DeLuca. The results loaded. His hand started shaking. The first article was from 12 years ago. A society page photo from a charity gala. A young woman in a white dress standing between 2 men in tuxedos. The caption read, Vincent DeLuca and daughter Evelyn at the St. Regis Foundation dinner. Lucien Moreau pictured right. Graham zoomed in on the photo. It was her. Younger, harder, but unmistakably her. He clicked the next result, then the next. Each one peeled back another layer of a truth that made his stomach turn. Vincent DeLuca. Real estate magnate. Alleged connections to organized crime. 3 federal investigations, 0 indictments. Political donations spanning 5 decades. A family tree that stretched back to Prohibition. And Evelyn. His quiet, obedient wife, who'd never raised her voice or expressed an opinion about anything more controversial than where to order takeout. She was a ghost. She'd vanished 7 years ago from one of the most powerful crime families on the East Coast, and nobody had ever found her. Until tonight. Graham's phone slipped from his hand. Outside, thunder rolled across the sky like distant artillery fire. And somewhere in Manhattan, Evelyn DeLuca fell asleep in a room she'd abandoned as a girl and woke up in as something far more dangerous than Graham Mercer would ever understand. The storm was just beginning. Evelyn woke to the sound of traffic 20 floors below and sunlight cutting through floor-to-ceiling windows like a blade. For a disorienting moment, she didn't know where she was. Then memory crashed back. Graham, the divorce papers, the convoy of black SUVs, her father's bourbon-scented embrace. She was home. The bedroom looked exactly as she'd left it 7 years ago. Minimalist furniture and dark wood, closet doors that still held clothes she'd abandoned, a bookshelf lined with college textbooks on business management and international finance that she'd studied before deciding none of it mattered if you couldn't choose your own life. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Lucien. Car leaves in 40 minutes. Wear something that won't wrinkle. No good morning, no pleasantries, just instructions. Evelyn smiled despite herself. She showered in the marble bathroom, letting scalding water beat against her shoulders until her skin turned pink. When she stepped out, steam fogged the mirror. She wiped it clean with her palm and stared at her reflection. Same face, different eyes. The woman looking back at her wasn't the same person who'd sat alone with a melting cake yesterday. That woman had been waiting for permission to exist. This woman didn't wait for anything. Evelyn dressed carefully. Black slacks that fit like they were tailored, which they were. A silk blouse the color of cream, low heels, minimal jewelry. She pulled her hair back into a sleek ponytail and studied herself one more time. Professional, controlled, dangerous. Perfect. She found Lucien in the penthouse kitchen, drinking espresso and reading something on his phone. He looked up when she entered, his gaze traveling over her in one quick assessment. "Good," he said. "You look like you mean business." "What business am I supposed to mean?" Lucien set down his phone. "Your father owns 16 restaurant properties across Manhattan and Brooklyn. High-end establishments, the kind where politicians have dinner and movie stars throw private parties. On paper, they're legitimate, very profitable, very clean. And off paper, they're hemorrhaging money. 3 of them are barely breaking even. 2 are actively losing cash every quarter, and the managers have been stealing from us for the better part of 2 years. Evelyn poured herself coffee. "Why hasn't anyone done anything about it?" "Your father wanted to wait for you." She turned, cup halfway to her lips. "That's insane. He could have handled this himself." "He could have," Lucien agreed, "but he wanted you to handle it, wanted the organization to see you handle it. A test, a demonstration." Evelyn sipped her coffee. It was bitter, strong, exactly how she used to drink it before Graham convinced her to switch to lattes with almond milk because they were healthier. She'd hated almond milk, had drunk it anyway because that's what good wives did. They compromised on everything, even the small things, until there was nothing left of them but accommodations. "Where do we start?" she asked. "Restaurant in the meatpacking district. High-end Italian. Manager's name is Tony Marcello. Been with the family for 12 years. Your father trusts him. But you don't." Lucien's expression didn't change. "I don't trust anyone who's been handling money without oversight for 2 years." They rode down in the private elevator, Lucien's security team already waiting in the lobby. 2 men in dark suits who moved like shadows, present but not intrusive, deadly but not obvious. They fell into formation around Evelyn and Lucien as they exited the building. The SUV was warm inside, smelled like leather and expensive cologne. Evelyn watched the city slide past the tinted windows. Manhattan in daylight looked different than she remembered. Sharper, more aggressive. Construction scaffolding and luxury storefronts and people moving fast because standing still meant getting trampled. "Nervous?" Lucien asked. "Should I be?" "Probably." Evelyn glanced at him. "You think I can't do this? I think you spent 7 years pretending to be someone else. I think walking back into this life won't be as easy as you're telling yourself it will be." "You're wrong." "Am I?" Evelyn's jaw tightened. "I'm not the girl who ran away, Lucien. I'm not scared anymore." "Good. Because scared people make mistakes, and mistakes get people killed." The restaurant was tucked between a boutique hotel and an art gallery, the kind of place with unmarked doors and reservation lists that closed months in advance. Lucien led her through the front entrance, locked at 11 a.m., and into a dining room that smelled like fresh bread and espresso and money. Tony Marcello was waiting at the bar. He was in his 50s, thick around the middle, with thinning hair and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. When he saw Evelyn, the smile faltered. "Miss DeLuca," he said carefully. "It's been a long time." "It has." Tony's gaze flicked to Lucien, then back to Evelyn. "Your father mentioned you'd be coming by. Didn't realize it would be so soon." "I don't like wasting time," Evelyn said. She moved past him toward the office in the back, heels clicking on polished hardwood. "Let's talk numbers." The office was cramped, cluttered with invoices and delivery schedules and framed photos of Tony shaking hands with minor celebrities. Evelyn sat behind the desk without asking permission. Lucien remained standing near the door, his presence a quiet threat. Tony hovered awkwardly. "What kind of numbers are we talking about?" Evelyn opened a laptop Lucien had brought and pulled up a spreadsheet. "Revenue for the last 6 quarters. I want to see everything: food costs, labor, overhead, profit margins. I can get those for you by end of day. I want them now." Tony's smile finally died. "Miss DeLuca, with all respect, I've been running this place for over a decade. Your father's never had complaints." "My father isn't here, I am." Evelyn leaned back in the chair, her eyes locked on Tony. "And I'm not asking. I'm telling you to pull the numbers. Now." Tony's face flushed. He glanced at Lucien, looking for backup or maybe sympathy. He found neither. "Fine," Tony muttered. He moved to a filing cabinet and started pulling folders, slapping them down on the desk with more force than necessary. "Here, everything you want." Evelyn opened the first folder, scanned the pages. Her eyes, trained by 7 years of watching Graham manipulate balance sheets and quarterly reports, caught the discrepancies immediately. Food costs were inflated by nearly 30%. Labor hours didn't match scheduling records. And there were cash withdrawals listed as miscellaneous expenses that totaled over $40,000 in 3 months. She looked up at Tony. "Where did this $40,000 go?" Tony shifted his weight. "Operating costs. You know how it is? Things come up, vendors need cash payments, equipment breaks down. Show me the receipts." "I don't keep receipts for everything. It's not always practical." Evelyn closed the folder. "Tony, I'm going to ask you one more time. Where did the money go?" "I told you, you're lying." The room went cold. Tony's jaw worked. "Miss DeLuca, I've been loyal to your family since before you were born. I'm not going to stand here and be accused." "You're not being accused," Evelyn interrupted. "You're being caught." She stood, moved around the desk until she was close enough to see sweat beading on Tony's upper lip. "I know exactly what you've been doing. You've been skimming, inflating costs, pocketing the difference, and hoping nobody would notice because my father trusted you." Tony's hands curled into fists. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Don't I?" Evelyn's voice dropped. "I spent 7 years married to a man who thought I was too stupid to understand how money works. I watched him lie to investors, manipulate reports, hide assets. You think I can't recognize the same tricks when I see them?" Tony's face had gone pale. "Your father—" "My father put me in charge, which means you answer to me now." Evelyn stepped closer. "So I'm going to give you a choice. You can tell me the truth right now. How much you stole, who you owe, why you did it. Or I can have Lucien's men tear this place apart until we find the proof ourselves. Your choice." Tony looked at Lucien. Lucien stared back with the expression of a man who'd done worse things than tear apart restaurants looking for evidence. Tony's voice cracked. "I got into some debt. Gambling, nothing serious at first, but it got out of hand." "How much?" 60,000, maybe 70. "Who do you owe?" Tony hesitated. "Tony," Evelyn said quietly. "Who do you owe?" "Dmitry Volkov. He runs—" "I know who he runs with." Evelyn felt ice settle in her stomach. "Volkov, Russian syndicate operating out of Brighton Beach. Violent, unpredictable, and currently expanding territory into areas that had belonged to the DeLucas for 3 generations. How long have you been paying him?" 8 months. "And you used my family's money to do it." Tony's shoulders sagged. "I didn't have a choice. Volkov said if I didn't pay, he'd kill you. I know how it works." Evelyn turned away, thinking. The math was simple. Tony had stolen from them to pay off a rival syndicate, which meant Volkov now had leverage on one of the DeLuca operations, which meant this wasn't just about money. It was about territory, power, control. Behind her, Tony was still talking. "I'll pay it back, every cent. Just give me time." "Shut up," Evelyn said. Tony shut up. Evelyn looked at Lucian. "Take him downstairs." Tony's eyes went wide. "Wait, what are you going to do?" "I'm going to think. You're going to wait." Lucian moved. Tony tried to back away, but one of the security men was already there, gripping his arm with professional efficiency. They led him out of the office and down a narrow staircase that probably led to the wine cellar, or storage area, or whatever soundproofed room the DeLucas kept for situations exactly like this. Evelyn stood alone in the office, her heart hammering against her ribs. 7 years. 7 years away from this world, and it had taken less than an hour for her to fall back into the patterns, the calculations, the cold pragmatism that turned human beings into problems that needed solving. She pressed her palms flat against the desk and breathed. This was who she was, who she'd always been. The girl who'd run away to be normal had been a fantasy, a beautiful, desperate fantasy that had cost her 7 years of her life. Evelyn pulled out her phone and called her father. He answered on the second ring. "How's Tony?" "Compromised. He's been stealing from us to pay off Dmitry Volkov." Vincent was quiet for a moment. "How much?" 70,000, maybe more." "And you verified this?" "He confessed." Another pause. "What do you want to do?" Evelyn closed her eyes. "What would you do?" "I'd put a bullet in his head and send his body to Volkov as a message. Let him know we don't tolerate theft or disloyalty." "That's one option. What's the other?" Evelyn opened her eyes. "I use him." Vincent made a sound that might have been approval or amusement. "Explain." "Tony's already connected to Volkov's operation. He's been making payments for 8 months. That means he has access. Information. Maybe even direct contact with Volkov's lieutenants." Evelyn started pacing. "If I kill him, we lose that access. But if I keep him alive, if I control him, I can use him to feed Volkov bad information, disrupt his operations, find weaknesses. That's risky." "It's strategic." Vincent laughed. It was a short, sharp sound. "You sound like your mother." Evelyn stopped pacing. "Is that a compliment?" "It's a fact. She was the smartest person I ever met. Ruthless when she needed to be. Merciful when it served her purposes." Vincent's voice softened slightly. "She would have handled Tony the same way you're handling him now. So I have your approval?" "You don't need my approval, Evie. You need to trust your instincts." He paused. "But yes, you have it." Evelyn hung up and went downstairs. The storage room was cold, dimly lit, smelled like concrete and old wine. Tony sat on a metal chair with his hands zip-tied behind him, his face slick with sweat. Lucian stood against the wall, watching. Evelyn pulled up another chair and sat facing Tony. "Here's what's going to happen," she said. "You're going to keep working for me. You're going to run this restaurant exactly the way you've been running it, and you're going to keep making payments to Volkov." Tony blinked. "What?" "But from now on, every payment goes through me first. I control the money. I decide what information you give him. You're my asset now, Tony, not his." "He'll kill me if he finds out." "Then don't let him find out." Tony stared at her. "You're insane." "No, I'm practical." Evelyn leaned forward. "You stole from my family. That usually ends with you in a ditch somewhere, but I'm giving you a chance to earn back your life. You help me, you survive. You betray me, and what Volkov would do to you will seem merciful compared to what I'll do." Tony's breath came in short gasps. "I can't." "Yes, you can. Because the alternative is dying tonight." Silence. Finally, Tony nodded. Evelyn stood. "Good. Lucien will give you instructions. Follow them exactly." She walked out, leaving Tony shaking in his chair. Outside, the afternoon sun felt too bright, too clean. Evelyn got into the SUV and sat very still, her hands folded in her lap to hide the trembling. Lucien slid in beside her. "You all right?" "No." "Good. That means you're still human." The SUV pulled into traffic. Evelyn watched the city blur past and wondered when making death threats had started feeling routine, when she'd stopped flinching at violence, when she'd learned to weaponize other people's fear. The answer was simple. She'd always known. She'd just spent 7 years pretending she didn't. "Where to now?" she asked. "Your father wants to see you. The estate." Evelyn nodded. The estate. The sprawling property in Westchester where she'd grown up, where her mother had died when Evelyn was 16, where Vincent DeLuca had raised her to be exactly what she was becoming. They drove north out of Manhattan, through suburbs that looked nothing like the sterile neighborhood where she'd lived with Graham. These suburbs had history, old money, gates that didn't open for strangers. The DeLuca estate sat on 20 acres behind stone walls and wrought iron fencing. Security cameras tracked their approach. The gates opened silently. Vincent was waiting in his study, a room lined with books he'd never read, and art he'd never appreciated but had bought because powerful men were supposed to have studies with books and art. He poured her bourbon without asking if she wanted it. "You handled Tony well," he said. "I threatened a man at gunpoint. You showed restraint. There's a difference." Vincent handed her the glass. "Sit down, Evie. We need to talk about Volkov." Evelyn sat. The bourbon burned going down. "Dimitri's been making moves for 6 months," Vincent continued. "Small at first, buying up properties on the edges of our territory, recruiting low-level dealers from our operations, testing boundaries." "And you let him?" "I've been waiting to see how far he'd push. Apparently he's pushing into our restaurants now." Vincent's jaw tightened. "That's not a test, that's a declaration." "So what do we do?" "We push back, hard, make an example." Evelyn set down her glass. "Or we play it smart. Use Tony to undermine him from the inside. Let Volkov think he's winning while we dismantle his operation piece by piece." Vincent studied her. "You really think that'll work?" "I think burning down his empire is more satisfying than just killing him." Vincent's mouth curved into something that might have been pride. "You're definitely your mother's daughter." The study door opened. Lucien entered, his expression unreadable. "We have a problem." Vincent stood. "What kind of problem?" "Graham Mercer is downstairs. He's demanding to see Evelyn." Evelyn's blood went cold. "How did he—" "He followed us. Hired a private investigator yesterday. Tracked Evelyn to the penthouse." Lucian's voice was flat, controlled. "He's threatening to go to the police if we don't let him talk to her." Vincent's face darkened. "I'll handle this." "No." Evelyn stood. "I'll handle it. Evie, he's my problem. Let me deal with it." Vincent looked like he wanted to argue, but something in Evelyn's expression stopped him. He nodded once. Evelyn followed Lucien downstairs to the main entrance hall. Graham stood near the door, flanked by 2 of Vincent's security men who looked ready to throw him through the nearest window. Graham looked terrible, unshaven, hollow-eyed. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his tie loose around his neck. "Evelyn?" he said when he saw her. Relief flooded his face. "Thank God. I've been trying to reach you for 2 days." "I've been busy." "Busy?" Graham laughed. It sounded unhinged. "Busy doing what? Playing mob wife?" Evelyn descended the stairs slowly. "You need to leave." "I need answers. I need to understand what the hell is happening." Graham ran a hand through his hair. "I looked you up, Evelyn. I know who your family is, what they do. Then you know why you need to leave. Were you ever going to tell me? 7 years, and you never once mentioned that your father is a—" "Careful," Lucien said quietly. Graham's gaze snapped to Lucian. "Who the hell are you? Her bodyguard? Her new boyfriend?" "I'm the man who's going to remove you from this property if you don't walk out on your own." Graham's hands curled into fists. "You can't just— This is insane. Evelyn, please, just talk to me." Evelyn stopped a few feet away from him, close enough to see the desperation in his eyes, close enough to remember 7 years of breakfast conversations and anniversary dinners and the slow suffocation of being married to someone who never saw her. "What do you want, Graham?" "I want to understand. I want to know who you really are. You had 7 years to figure that out. You never bothered. Because you never told me. I didn't tell you because I wanted to be normal. I wanted to believe I could have a quiet life with someone who loved me for me, not for my last name or my connections or what I could do for them. Evelyn's voice was steady, cold. I was wrong. You didn't love me, Graham. You tolerated me. And the second something better came along, you threw me away. Graham flinched. That's not... I made a mistake. I see that now. You made a choice. Don't confuse regret with revelation. Evelyn, please. You wanted a divorce. You got one. Now leave. Graham took a step toward her. Instantly, Lucian moved, putting himself between them. Don't, Lucian said. Graham looked at Lucian, then back at Evelyn. His face crumpled. What happened to you? You were sweet, gentle. You never would have... I was playing a role, Evelyn interrupted. I was pretending to be someone I'm not because I thought that's what happiness looked like. But I'm done pretending, Graham. I'm done being small for men who can't handle the fact that I'm bigger than they are. So this is it? You're just going to disappear into this criminal empire and pretend the last 7 years didn't happen? The last 7 years were a mistake. I'm correcting it. Graham's eyes filled with tears, actual tears. I still love you. No, you don't. You love the idea of me, the woman who didn't threaten you, who made you feel powerful because she made herself weak. Evelyn stepped closer. But that woman never existed, Graham. She was a ghost, and ghosts can't love you back. She turned and walked away. Behind her, Graham shouted her name, once, twice. Then Lucian's security team was moving, escorting him out with professional efficiency. Evelyn made it to the upstairs bathroom before her hands started shaking. She gripped the marble sink and stared at her reflection. Same face? Different eyes? Again. The woman in the mirror had just destroyed the last connection to her old life, had looked her ex-husband in the eye and burned every bridge between who she'd been and who she was becoming. There was no going back now. Someone knocked on the door. Evelyn. Lucien. She opened the door. He stood in the hallway, his expression unreadable. He's gone, Lucien said. Good. Are you all right? I don't know. Lucien studied her face. You did the right thing. Did I? He was a liability. He would have kept coming back, kept trying to pull you into his world. Lucien's hand came up, fingers brushing her cheek. You don't belong in his world, Evelyn. Where do I belong? Here, with me. Evelyn's breath caught. Lucien, I've waited 7 years for you to choose this, to choose us. His hand slid to the back of her neck, pulling her closer. Don't make me wait anymore. He kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't soft. It was 7 years of patience snapping into hunger, 7 years of silence breaking into something raw and desperate and utterly consuming. Evelyn kissed him back like she was drowning and he was air. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Lucian rested his forehead against hers. Tell me you're staying, he said. I'm staying. Tell me you're mine. Evelyn hesitated. I'm trying to be. Lucian pulled back slightly, his dark eyes searching hers. What does that mean? It means I'm terrified. It means I don't know if I can be what you need me to be. I need you to be yourself. That's all I've ever needed. Myself is dangerous. Good. Lucian smiled. I like dangerous. They stayed like that for a long moment, the space between them charged with everything unspoken. Then Lucian's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression changed. We need to go, now. What happened? Volkov just hit one of our other restaurants. 3 of our men are dead. Evelyn felt the floor drop out from under her. He knows, she said. He knows Tony talked, which means he knows we're on to him. Lucian was already moving, his hand on Evelyn's arm, pulling her toward the stairs. This is about to get very ugly, very fast. They raced to the SUV. Vincent was already on the phone, shouting orders to someone on the other end. Security teams mobilized across the property like a small army preparing for war. Evelyn got into the vehicle, her heart hammering. Lucian slid in beside her, already pulling a gun from the console and checking the magazine. What are we doing? Evelyn asked. We're going to the restaurant. We're going to secure our people. And then we're going to find Dmitry Volkov and end this before it spreads. The SUV tore down the driveway, through the gates, back toward the city. Evelyn stared out the window as twilight bled across the sky like a wound opening. Somewhere in Manhattan, 3 men were dead because she'd threatened Tony. Because she'd thought she could play games with a predator who didn't follow rules. This was the cost of coming home. This was the price of power. And as the city lights rose around them like stars falling upward, Evelyn realized with cold, absolute certainty that there was no turning back now. She'd made her choice. Now she had to live with it, or die trying. The restaurant was a war zone. Evelyn stepped out of the SUV into a scene that looked like something ripped from a nightmare. Shattered glass glittering on wet pavement, police barricades being erected by uniformed officers who moved with the slow deliberation of people who'd seen too much violence to be shocked anymore. And paramedics loading black body bags into an ambulance with its lights spinning red and blue against the darkness. 3 men dead. 3 of her father's men gunned down in broad daylight while customers screamed and ran for cover. Lucian's hand pressed against her lower back, guiding her past the police line. One of the officers started to object, saw Lucian's face, and stepped aside without a word. Money and power bought a lot of things in this city. Access to crime scenes was just one of them. Inside, the dining room looked like an abattoir. Tables overturned, chairs splintered, blood pooled on marble floors that had cost more per square foot than most people earned in a month. The smell hit Evelyn like a physical blow. Copper and gunpowder, and something else, something organic and wrong that her brain refused to process. Vincent stood near the bar, talking to a man in a cheap suit who had detective written all over him. When he saw Evelyn, he excused himself and crossed the room. "You shouldn't be here," he said quietly. "Neither should you." "Where's Tony?" "Gone. Disappeared 30 minutes before the shooting started." Vincent's jaw was tight, the muscles working beneath his skin like cables under tension. "He set this up, led Volkov's people right to our men and vanished." Evelyn felt ice slide down her spine. "I told him to keep working. I gave him instructions. And he took those instructions straight to Volkov." Vincent's voice was flat, emotionless. "This is on you, Evie. You wanted to play games with a desperate man, and he played you instead." The words hit harder than a slap. Evelyn looked at the blood on the floor, at the chalk outlines where bodies had fallen, and felt something crack inside her chest. 3 men. 3 lives ended because she'd thought she was smarter than everyone else. Because she'd believed she could control Tony the same way she'd watched Graham manipulate people for 7 years. "I didn't..." Her voice broke. "I thought I could use him. You thought wrong." Vincent's hand came up, gripping her shoulder hard enough to hurt. "This is the difference between playing at power and wielding it. You hesitated, showed mercy when you should have shown strength, and now 3 families are burying their sons because you wanted to prove you were smarter than me." Evelyn jerked away from him. "Don't put this on me. You're the one who wanted me to handle it. You're the one who said to trust my instincts. Your instincts got people killed. Then maybe you should have handled it yourself instead of using me as some kind of test." Vincent's eyes went cold. "This isn't a test, Evelyn. This is your life now. You don't get to walk away when things get ugly. You don't get to pretend you're still that scared girl who ran off to play house with some corporate nobody. Don't talk about Graham. Graham is irrelevant. He always was. The only reason you married him was because you were too afraid to face what you really are." Vincent stepped closer, his voice dropping to something barely above a whisper. "You're a DeLuca. That means you make hard choices. Kill or be killed. Mercy is a luxury we can't afford." Evelyn stared at her father and saw not the man who'd taught her to ride a bike or helped her with algebra homework, but the man who'd built an empire on violence and fear and the calculated destruction of anyone who stood in his way. She'd spent 7 years trying to forget that man existed. Now she was becoming him. Lucian appeared at her elbow. "We need to move. Volkov's people could come back." Vincent nodded. "Take her to the penthouse. Keep her there until this is contained." "I'm not hiding," Evelyn said. "You're not hiding. You're staying alive." Vincent turned to the detective, dismissing her entirely. Lucian's hand closed around her arm, firm but not cruel. "Come on." Evelyn let him lead her back to the SUV. She got in, her hands shaking so badly she had to clasp them together to make it stop. The vehicle pulled away from the scene, sirens fading behind them. "He's right, you know," Lucian said after a long silence. "About what?" "About mercy. About hesitation." Lucian stared out the window at the city sliding past. "You wanted to save Tony because you thought redemption was possible. Because some part of you still believes people can change. Can't they? Not in this world, not in our world. Lucien finally looked at her. You ran away 7 years ago because you couldn't accept that truth. But you're back now, and that truth hasn't changed. It's just been waiting for you to remember it. Evelyn's throat tightened. So what do I do? You stop trying to be the hero. Stop trying to save people who would sell you out the second it became convenient. Lucien's voice was gentle, almost kind. You accept that power requires sacrifice. Always has. Always will. And if I can't, then you'll die. And everyone connected to you will die with you. The penthouse felt like a cage when they arrived. Evelyn paced the living room while Lucien made phone calls, coordinating security sweeps and damage control with the kind of efficiency that came from years of practice. She listened to him talk about body disposal and witness intimidation and police payoffs with the same tone someone else might use to discuss quarterly earnings. This was normal for him, for all of them. But it wasn't normal for her. Not yet. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. You made a mistake trusting Tony, but mistakes can be corrected. Meet me at Pier 47 in Red Hook. 1 hour. Come alone. DV Dmitry Volkov. Evelyn stared at the message, her heart hammering. Lucien appeared behind her. What is it? She showed him the phone, his expression darkened. It's a trap, obviously. So you're not going? Evelyn looked at him. What if it's not? What if he wants to negotiate? Men like Volkov don't negotiate. They set traps and wait for idiots to walk into them. 3 men are dead because of me, Lucien. If there's even a chance I can end this without more bloodshed, then what? You walk into an ambush and die like a martyr? That doesn't bring those men back. It just makes you another casualty. Evelyn's hands curled into fists. I have to do something. No, you have to stay alive. Staying alive isn't enough anymore. Lucien grabbed her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. Listen to me. Volkov wants you dead or compromised. That message is bait. The second you show up, he'll either kill you or take you hostage and use you against your father. Either way, we lose. And if I don't go, what then? We wait for him to hit another restaurant? Kill more of our people? Evelyn shook her head. I can't just sit here doing nothing. You're not doing nothing. You're staying alive. That's the priority. For who? For you? For my father? Evelyn pulled away from him. I didn't come back here to be protected, Lucien. I came back to stop being powerless. Then stop acting powerless. Stop walking into obvious traps because you feel guilty. I don't feel guilty, You absolutely feel guilty. It's written all over your face. Lucien's voice softened. You think those men died because you made the wrong call with Tony, but they didn't die because of you. They died because Volkov is trying to start a war. And war has casualties. That's not your fault. Isn't it? No, it's his fault. And if you walk into that meeting, you'll be giving him exactly what he wants. A chance to destroy you before you become a real threat. Evelyn sank onto the couch, her head in her hands. So what do I do? You let me handle it. How? Lucien's expression went cold. By doing what your father should have done months ago. I'm going to find Dmitry Volkov and put a bullet in his head. That'll start a gang war. We're already in a gang war. He just fired the first shot. Evelyn looked up at him. And if you're wrong? If he really does want to negotiate? Then I'll negotiate with his corpse. Before Evelyn could respond, Lucien's phone rang. He answered, listened for a moment, and his entire body went rigid. When? He said into the phone. A pause. How many? Another pause. Lock it down. Nobody in or out until I get there. He hung up. Evelyn stood. What happened? The penthouse where you stayed last night. Someone planted a bomb in the parking garage. It went off 10 minutes ago. The floor seemed to tilt beneath Evelyn's feet. Was anyone hurt? 3 security guards. They're alive, but barely. Lucien was already moving toward the door. Volkov's escalating. This isn't about territory anymore. He's trying to decapitate the entire organization. How did he even know where I was staying? Lucien stopped, turned. His face had gone very still, very careful. That's an excellent question, he said quietly. Understanding crashed over Evelyn like cold water. You think someone told him? I think someone's been feeding him information for months. Someone close enough to know your movements, your father's operations, our security protocols. Who? I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out. Lucien pulled a gun from inside his jacket and checked the magazine with practiced ease. Stay here. Don't answer the door for anyone. Don't leave this apartment. I'll be back in 2 hours. Lucien, promise me you'll stay here. Evelyn hesitated, then nodded. I promise. Lucien kissed her forehead, hard and fast, and then he was gone. The penthouse fell silent. Evelyn stood in the middle of the living room, her mind racing. A mole. Someone inside the organization feeding information to Volkov. Someone who knew where she'd been staying, knew about Tony, knew enough to coordinate attacks with surgical precision. Who had that kind of access? Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the unknown number. Your guard dog left. Good. That makes this easier. The pier. 45 minutes. Or the next bomb goes off somewhere with more casualties. Your choice. DV. Evelyn's blood went cold. He was watching. Right now. Someone was watching the building, tracking who came and went, reporting back to Volkov in real time. Which meant staying here wasn't safe. Which meant Lucien's plan to protect her had just been compromised. Evelyn grabbed her phone and called her father. No answer. She tried again. Voicemail. Panic clawed at her throat. She pulled up Lucien's contact, but before she could dial, the lights went out. Total darkness. Evelyn froze, her breath loud in her ears. The penthouse had backup generators. The power shouldn't have cut out unless... Footsteps in the hallway outside. Quiet. Deliberate. Someone was coming. Evelyn moved on instinct, grabbing a knife from the kitchen block and pressing herself against the wall beside the front door. Her heart was trying to break through her ribs. Every self-defense lesson her father had drilled into her as a teenager came flooding back. Wait for them to enter. Stay low. Go for the throat or eyes. Don't hesitate. The door handle turned. Slowly. Then the door opened and a figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the dim emergency lighting in the hallway. Evelyn lunged. She got 3 steps before the figure moved with impossible speed, catching her wrist and twisting until the knife clattered to the floor. A hand clamped over her mouth, silencing the scream building in her throat. Quiet, a familiar voice hissed in her ear. Tony. Evelyn's brain short-circuited. Tony was dead. Or gone. Or... He spun her around, one hand still over her mouth, the other holding a gun pressed against her ribs. In the darkness, she could barely make out his face, but she could smell him, sweat and fear and cigarette smoke. Don't scream, Tony whispered. I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here to get you out. Evelyn bit down on his hand. Tony yelped and jerked back. Evelyn scrambled away, putting the couch between them. Stay away from me, she said, her voice shaking. Miss DeLuca, please. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. You sold us out to Volkov. 3 men are dead because of you. I didn't have a choice, Tony's voice cracked. He said he'd kill my daughter, my granddaughter. What was I supposed to do? You were supposed to come to me, to my father. We could have protected them. You don't know Volkov. You can't protect anyone from him. Tony took a step forward, the gun still in his hand but not pointed at her anymore. He has people everywhere. Inside your organization, inside the police, everywhere. You're lying. I'm trying to save your life. Tony's hand was shaking. Volkov doesn't want territory. He wants the DeLucas gone. Completely. And he's got someone on the inside helping him do it. Evelyn's throat went dry. Who? I don't know. I never met them. But whoever it is, they're feeding Volkov everything. Security details, financial records, personal information. That's how he knew about the penthouse. That's how he knew Lucien would leave you alone. Why should I believe you? Because I'm here instead of at the pier waiting for you to show up. Tony lowered the gun completely. Volkov told me to make sure you went to that meeting. Said if I did, my family would be safe. But I know what happens at that pier. I've seen the bodies they pull out of the water. Evelyn stared at him. So what, you grew a conscience? I grew a brain. If Volkov takes out the DeLucas, you think he's going to keep his word about my family? He'll kill them anyway, just to tie up loose ends. Tony's face was pale, slick with sweat. My only chance is if you survive this. If the DeLucas survive this. Where's my father? Estate. locked down with his security team. Volkov can't touch him there. And Lucien? Tony hesitated. Tony, where's Lucien? He's walking into a trap. The bomb at the parking garage was a distraction. Volkov's real target is the restaurant where the shooting happened. He's got a dozen men waiting there, and Lucien's heading straight for them. Evelyn felt the world tilt. How do you know this? Because I helped set it up before I came here. Tony's voice was barely a whisper. I'm sorry. I thought I could. Evelyn moved before conscious thought caught up with her body. She grabbed the knife from the floor and pressed it against Tony's throat hard enough to draw a thin line of blood. Give me your phone, she said. Miss DeLuca. Now. Tony fumbled in his pocket and handed over a burner phone with shaking hands. Evelyn grabbed it, found the most recent call, and hit redial. It rang twice. A man answered, accented voice, cold. Tony, tell me she's on her way. This is Evelyn DeLuca, she said, and I'm coming to the pier. But not because you threatened me. I'm coming because we're going to end this, face to face. Silence on the other end. Then a low chuckle. Bold, Dmitry Volkov said. Stupid, but bold. 45 minutes, Evelyn said, and hung up. She shoved the phone in her pocket and grabbed Tony's gun, checking the magazine the way Lucien had taught her years ago, fully loaded. What are you doing? Tony asked. What I should have done from the beginning. Evelyn headed for the door. I'm finishing this. You can't go there alone. He'll kill you. Probably. But if I don't go, he'll kill Lucien. And then he'll kill my father. And then he'll kill everyone I've ever cared about until there's nothing left but ashes. Evelyn stopped at the door and looked back at Tony. You want redemption? You want your family to survive? She tossed him his phone. Call Lucien. Tell him it's a trap. Tell him to get his men to the pier instead of the restaurant. And then you disappear. Take your family and run as far as you can, because when this is over, I don't ever want to see your face again. She left him standing in the dark penthouse and took the stairs down to the parking garage, her heart hammering against her ribs like something trying to escape. The SUV was still there, keys in the ignition, because Lucien's people never expected anyone would be stupid enough to steal from them. Evelyn got in and started the engine. Red Hook, Pier 47. 20 minutes if she pushed it. She pulled out of the garage and onto the street, the city lights blurring past as she drove south toward the waterfront. Her hands were steady on the wheel, but her mind was screaming. This was insane, suicidal, everything Lucien had told her not to do. But 3 men were dead because she'd hesitated, because she'd tried to be smart instead of decisive, because she'd thought mercy was strength when really it was just fear dressed up in better clothes. No more hesitation, no more fear. The GPS said 15 minutes. Evelyn pressed harder on the accelerator. Her phone rang. Lucien. She answered. Where the hell are you? His voice was raw, furious. Heading to Red Hook. Turn around. Right now. I can't. Evelyn. Tony told me about the restaurant. About the trap. Did you get his call? Yes. My men are rerouting now. A pause. Which means you should be turning around. Volkov has someone inside the organization, someone feeding him information. We can't win this war if we're bleeding from the inside. So let me handle it. No. Evelyn's voice was steady now, cold. This is my mess. I'm going to clean it up. By getting yourself killed? By doing what needs to be done. Lucien was silent for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was different, quieter. If you go to that pier, I can't protect you. I don't need protection. I need you to trust me. Trust you to do what? To be exactly what I am. Another pause. What are you, Evelyn? She looked at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Same face. Different eyes. A DeLuca, she said. She hung up before Lucien could respond. 10 minutes. The city gave way to industrial wasteland. Warehouses and shipping containers and cranes standing like skeletal giants against the night sky. The Hudson River stretched out to her left, black water reflecting scattered lights like shattered glass. Pier 47 appeared ahead, a long concrete platform jutting into the water. Empty except for a single black car parked at the far end. Evelyn pulled up 50 feet away and killed the engine. This was it. No backup. No plan. Just her and a man who wanted her dead, and the desperate hope that she could somehow talk her way out of a situation that had already cost 3 lives. She checked Tony's gun one more time, then tucked it into the back of her waistband and got out of the SUV. The night air was cold, smelled like salt and rust and diesel fuel. Her heels clicked on concrete as she walked toward the car, each step taking her closer to whatever waited at the end of this pier. The car door opened. Dmitry Volkov emerged. He was younger than she expected, maybe 40, with sharp features and pale eyes that looked almost colorless in the dim light. He wore an expensive suit that fit too well to be anything but custom, and when he smiled, it didn't reach his eyes. "Miss DeLuca," he said, his accent turning her name into something foreign. "You came. You threatened to blow up more buildings. I didn't have much choice. Everyone has choices. You chose to come alone. That shows either courage or stupidity." Volkov tilted his head. "I haven't decided which yet." Evelyn stopped 10 feet away, close enough to talk, far enough to run if necessary. "You wanted to talk," she said. "So talk. I wanted to see you, the prodigal daughter, the ghost who disappeared for 7 years and came back thinking she could play queen." Volkov circled her slowly, like a predator assessing prey. "You made a mistake with Tony, you know. Mercy is weakness in our world." "So I've been told. And yet you keep making the same mistakes. Hesitating. Trying to save people who can't be saved." Volkov stopped in front of her. "Your father built his empire on fear and blood. But you? You want to build something different, something softer." "You don't know what I want." "Don't I?" Volkov's smile widened. "You want to be loved, respected. You want people to choose loyalty instead of fear. But that's not how power works, Miss DeLuca. People only follow strength. And you—" He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. "You're not strong enough." Evelyn's hand moved to the gun at her back. Instantly, men appeared from behind shipping containers. 6 of them, all armed, all pointing weapons directly at her. Volkov tisked. "Did you really think I'd meet you alone?" Evelyn's hand froze. "What do you want?" "I want your father's empire, and I want you to give it to me." "I don't have that authority." "No, but you will." Volkov gestured, and 2 of his men grabbed Evelyn's arms, yanking the gun from her waistband and forcing her to her knees on the cold concrete. "See, here's what's going to happen. You're going to call your father. You're going to tell him that unless he surrenders every piece of territory, every business, every asset he controls, I'm going to kill you slowly and send him pieces until there's nothing left to bury." Evelyn's breath came in short gasps. "He'll never—" "He will. Because you're all he has left. His wife is dead. His empire is bleeding. And you're his last hope for legacy." Volkov crouched in front of her, his pale eyes boring into hers. "So make the call, or I start cutting off fingers." Evelyn stared at him and felt something inside her finally, irrevocably break. Not fear. Clarity. "No," she said. Volkov blinked. "Excuse me?" "I said no. You want my father's empire? You're going to have to take it, because I'm not giving you anything." Volkov's expression darkened. "You think I'm bluffing?" "I think you've already lost and you're too stupid to realize it." His hand cracked across her face hard enough to split her lip. Blood filled her mouth, hot and copper. "Last chance," Volkov said. Evelyn spat blood onto his expensive shoes and smiled. "Go to hell." Volkov stood, his face twisted with rage. "Kill her." The men raised their weapons, and then the night exploded into gunfire. The first shot came from the darkness behind a shipping container, the muzzle flash bright as lightning. One of Volkov's men went down before the sound even registered, his weapon clattering across concrete. Then the world became chaos. Gunfire erupted from 3 directions simultaneously. Lucien's security team pouring out of the shadows like ghosts materializing into violence. The men holding Evelyn dove for cover, releasing her arms. She hit the ground hard, tasting blood and concrete, her ears ringing from the percussion of automatic weapons, turning the night into a war zone. Volkov scrambled backward toward his car, shouting orders in Russian that were swallowed by gunfire. His men returned fire, muzzle flashes strobing the darkness like a broken strobe light. Bullets sparked off metal containers, punched through car windows, tore chunks out of concrete pilings. Evelyn crawled toward the edge of the pier, her hands scraping against rough concrete. A body fell next to her, one of Volkov's men, half his face missing. She grabbed his weapon without thinking, her fingers closing around polymer grip slick with blood. "Evelyn!" Lucien's voice cut through the chaos. "Stay down!" She couldn't see him, couldn't see anything except shadows and fire and men dying in slow motion all around her. A hand grabbed her ankle, yanking her backward. She kicked out blindly, connected with something soft. Someone grunted. She rolled over, bringing the stolen gun up just as one of Volkov's men lunged at her with a knife. Evelyn pulled the trigger. The recoil nearly broke her wrist. The man's chest erupted red and he went down gasping, the knife spinning away into darkness. She'd killed him. The thought hit her like cold water, but there was no time to process it because more gunfire was tearing through the air above her head, and someone was screaming and the smell of cordite was thick enough to choke on. Evelyn scrambled behind an overturned crate, her breath coming in ragged gasps. She checked the gun, half a magazine left. She'd never fired a weapon at a person before, had only practiced at ranges with paper targets that didn't bleed or beg or look surprised when bullets tore through them. But the man she'd shot was dead, and she was alive, and that was all that mattered. Movement to her left. She swung the gun around, finger on the trigger. "Don't shoot!" Tony emerged from behind a concrete pillar, his hands up, his face gray with terror. "It's me. What the hell are you doing here?" "I called Lucien like you said, then I followed you." Tony ducked as bullets punched holes in the pillar above his head. "I couldn't just... I had to..." "You had to what? Die like an idiot?" "I had to help." Evelyn stared at him. This pathetic, terrified man who'd betrayed them, who'd gotten 3 people killed, who'd spent weeks feeding information to their enemies. And now he was here, in the middle of a firefight, trying to redeem himself. "Stay behind me," she said. "Miss DeLuca, just do it." She moved around the crate, staying low, scanning for targets. The gunfire was starting to thin out. Bodies littered the pier, maybe 4 of Volkov's men down, 2 of Lucien's. The mathematics of violence playing out in real time. Volkov's car engine roared to life. Evelyn broke cover, running toward it. Bullets chewed up concrete at her feet, but she didn't stop, couldn't stop, because if Volkov escaped, then none of this meant anything. 3 men still dead. Tony still a traitor. And she'd be right back where she started, powerless, frightened, waiting for the next attack. The car lurched forward. Evelyn raised the gun, aimed for the back window, and fired. Glass exploded. The car swerved but didn't stop. She fired again, the magazine emptying in a string of sharp cracks that echoed across the water. The car fishtailed, one tire blown out, but Volkov kept driving. Metal scraped against concrete as the vehicle limped toward the street, smoke pouring from under the hood. Someone grabbed Evelyn from behind, spinning her around. Lucien. Blood on his face from a cut above his eye. His suit jacket torn, his weapon still in his hand. "Are you hurt?" His hands moved over her, checking for wounds with the clinical efficiency of someone who'd done this before. "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." Evelyn touched her face. Her fingers came away red, split lip from where Volkov had hit her, plus scrapes from hitting the concrete. Nothing serious. "Where is he?" she asked. "Gone. For now." Lucien pulled her close, his forehead pressing against hers. His breath was ragged, his whole body shaking with adrenaline. "You promised you'd stay at the penthouse. I lied. You could have been killed. So could you." Lucien pulled back, his dark eyes searching hers. "Don't ever do that again. Don't ever." His voice broke. "I can't lose you, Evelyn. Not now. Not after everything." She kissed him, hard and desperate and tasting like blood and gunpowder. When they broke apart, both of them were shaking. "We need to go," Lucien said. "Police will be here in 5 minutes." He grabbed her hand and pulled her toward an SUV idling at the edge of the pier. His security team was already moving, dragging wounded men into vehicles, leaving the dead where they fell. Tony stumbled after them, looking like he might vomit. They piled into the vehicle. Lucien's driver didn't wait for orders, just hit the accelerator and tore out of Red Hook like the hounds of hell were chasing them. Evelyn sat in the back seat, her hands still shaking, the stolen gun heavy in her lap. She'd killed someone. Put a bullet in a man's chest and watched the life drain out of his eyes. The rational part of her brain said it was self-defense, said she'd had no choice, said it was him or her. But the rest of her brain just kept replaying the moment, the kick of the gun, the spray of blood, the way he'd looked at her with something like surprise as he fell. "First time?" Lucien asked quietly. Evelyn nodded, not trusting her voice. "It doesn't get easier, but it gets necessary." His hand found hers, squeezing. "You did what you had to do." "I know." "Do you?" Evelyn looked at him. "I killed a man tonight, Lucien. I looked him in the eyes, and I pulled the trigger, and I'd do it again if I had to. Does that make me a monster?" "It makes you a survivor." "What's the difference?" Lucien's mouth twisted into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Survivors feel guilty. Monsters don't." They drove north in silence, the city lights growing brighter as they left the waterfront behind. Evelyn's phone buzzed. Her father. She answered. "Are you alive?" Vincent's voice was tight, controlled fury barely held in check. "Yes." "Lucien? He's here." "Good. Come to the estate now. We need to talk." "Papa, now, Evie?" He hung up. 40 minutes later, they pulled through the gates of the DeLuca estate. Every light in the main house was on, blazing against the darkness like a fortress under siege. Armed men patrolled the grounds in pairs, their weapons visible, their eyes scanning the shadows. Vincent was waiting in his study, a glass of bourbon in his hand and murder in his eyes. When Evelyn walked in, he set down the glass very carefully, like he was afraid if he moved too quickly, he might break something. "Explain," he said. Evelyn told him everything. Tony's warning, Volkov's message, the meeting at the pier, the firefight. Her father listened without interrupting, his face growing darker with each word. When she finished, Vincent turned to Lucien. "How many did we lose?" "2 dead, 3 wounded. Volkov lost at least 5, maybe more." "And Volkov himself?" "Escaped. We hit his car, but he got away." Vincent's jaw worked. He poured himself more bourbon, drank it in one swallow, and poured another. "You went to that pier knowing it was a trap." It wasn't a question, but Evelyn answered anyway. "Yes." "You could have been killed." "I know." "You could have been taken hostage, used against us." "I know that too." Vincent slammed the glass down hard enough to crack it. "Then why the hell did you go?" "Because 3 men died because of my mistake with Tony. Because Volkov was going to keep attacking us until someone stopped him. Because I was tired of being protected like I'm made of glass." Evelyn stepped forward, her voice rising. "You wanted me to take responsibility? To make hard choices? That's what I did. You threw your life away on a gamble. No, I bet on myself. And I won." "You got lucky. There's a difference." "Maybe, but I'm still here and Volkov's running scared, so I'll take luck over caution any day." Vincent stared at her, his chest heaving. Then slowly, something in his expression shifted. The anger didn't disappear, but it transformed into something else, something that might have been respect. "You're just like her," he said quietly. "Your mother. She would have done the same thing." Evelyn's throat tightened. Would she have survived it? Sometimes. Sometimes she'd come home bleeding and furious and so alive it hurt to look at her. Vincent's eyes went distant. She never apologized for it, never second-guessed herself. She just did what needed to be done and dealt with the consequences after. Did you hate her for it? I loved her for it, and it terrified me every single day. The study fell silent except for the ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner. Lucien cleared his throat. "We have a bigger problem. Volkov's still out there, wounded but not dead. He's going to retaliate." "Let him try," Vincent said. "We know he has someone feeding him information from inside our organization. We find that person, we cut off his intelligence network. Then we end him." "How do we find them?" Evelyn asked. "We set a trap of our own." Vincent's mouth curved into something predatory. "We feed different information to different people. See which version makes it back to Volkov. Classic mole hunt." Lucien nodded. "I'll coordinate with our department heads. Run the operation compartmentalized." "Do it fast. We don't have much time." Vincent looked at Evelyn. "And you're staying here until this is over. No arguments." "I wasn't going to argue." "Really? Really? I'm exhausted, I'm bleeding, and I killed someone tonight. I think I've earned a few hours of rest." Vincent's expression softened fractionally. Go clean up, get some sleep. We'll regroup in the morning. Evelyn left the study, her legs suddenly shaky with delayed shock. Lucian followed her upstairs to her old bedroom. She stood in the doorway, staring at the space where she'd spent her childhood, and felt like she was looking at someone else's life. You should shower, Lucian said gently. Get the blood off. Evelyn looked down at herself. Her clothes were splattered with it. Some hers, some belonging to men whose names she'd never know. Her hands were filthy, knuckles scraped raw. She went into the bathroom and turned on the shower, letting steam fill the small space. When she caught her reflection in the mirror, she barely recognized herself. Blood on her face, in her hair, eyes that looked hollow and ancient. She stripped off her ruined clothes and stepped under scalding water. The blood swirled down the drain in pink spirals. Evelyn stood there until the water ran clear, until her skin was red from heat and scrubbing, until she couldn't feel anything except the pounding spray against her shoulders. When she finally emerged, wrapped in a towel, Lucien was sitting on the edge of her bed, his head in his hands. You should have died tonight, he said without looking up. But I didn't. You should have. The odds. His voice cracked. When I heard you were going to the pier, I thought I'd lost you. I thought I'd spent 7 years waiting for you to come home just to watch you throw your life away on a suicide mission. Evelyn sat beside him. I had to go. Why? Because I needed to know if I could. If I was strong enough. If I was... She stopped, searching for words. If I was really one of you, or just pretending again. Lucien finally looked at her. And now you know? Now I know. Evelyn's hand found his. I'm not pretending anymore. He pulled her close, burying his face in her damp hair. They sat like that for a long time, neither of them speaking, just breathing together in the quiet darkness. Eventually, Lucien pulled back. I need to go coordinate the security sweeps. Make sure we lock down every entry point. Okay. Will you be all right here alone? Evelyn thought about the man she'd killed, about the blood still under her fingernails despite the shower, about the fact that somewhere in the city Dmitry Volkov was probably getting his wounds treated and planning his next move. I'll be fine, she said. Lucien kissed her forehead and left. Evelyn dressed in old clothes from her closet, sweatpants and a t-shirt that smelled like dust and memories. She tried to sleep, but her mind wouldn't stop replaying the firefight, the muzzle flash, the way the man had fallen. Around 3 a.m., she gave up and went downstairs. The estate was quiet except for the soft murmur of security guards talking on their radios. Evelyn wandered into the kitchen and made coffee she didn't want, just needing something to do with her hands. She was sitting at the counter, staring at steam rising from her cup, when Tony appeared in the doorway. He looked worse than she felt, pale, shaking, his eyes red-rimmed from crying or lack of sleep or both. I couldn't sleep, he said. Join the club. Tony moved into the kitchen hesitantly, like he expected her to throw him out. When she didn't, he poured himself coffee and stood on the other side of the counter. I'm sorry, he said quietly. For everything. For stealing. For betraying your family. For getting those men killed. Evelyn didn't respond. I know sorry doesn't fix anything. I know I deserve whatever punishment your father decides. Tony's hands shook around the coffee cup. But I want you to know, tonight, at the pier, when I followed you, that was real. That was me trying to make things right. You can't make this right, Tony. 3 families buried their sons because of you. I know. And you expect what? Forgiveness? No, I expect to die. Tony set down his cup. But before I do, I want to give you something. Information. Evelyn looked up. What kind of information? The mole. The person feeding Volkov intelligence? Tony's voice dropped to a whisper. I think I know who it is. Every muscle in Evelyn's body went rigid. Who? I'm not sure. But Volkov mentioned someone once, said they were close to your father. Someone with access to financial records, security protocols, personal information. Tony leaned forward. And whoever it is, they've been working with Volkov for at least 6 months, since before you came back. Evelyn's mind raced. Someone close to her father, with access to sensitive information, who'd been in position for months. The list of people who fit that description was short and terrifying. Do you have any proof? She asked. No, just overheard conversations. Fragments. Tony's expression was desperate. But I know Volkov's planning something big. Something that happens in the next 48 hours. He kept talking about a final solution. Said after this, the DeLucas would be finished. Evelyn stood, her coffee forgotten. I need to tell my father. Wait. Tony grabbed her arm. If you tell him now, without proof, the mole might hear about it. Might warn Volkov. You need to be smart about this. So what do I do? You watch. You listen. You figure out who it is before they figure out you're looking. Tony released her arm. And when you find them, you end them before they end you. Evelyn stared at him, this broken man who'd caused so much damage and was now trying to help, and wondered if redemption was ever really possible, or if it was just another lie people told themselves to sleep at night. Why are you telling me this? She asked. Because I have a daughter, a granddaughter, and if something happens to me, I need to know someone's watching out for them, someone who might show them the mercy I don't deserve. Evelyn wanted to tell him to go to hell, wanted to say his family meant nothing to her, that betrayal didn't earn bargaining chips. But she thought about the man she'd killed tonight, about the weight of that choice, about how easy it would be to keep killing until there was nothing left inside her but cold pragmatism. If you're lying to me, she started. I'm not. If you're lying, or if this is some kind of game, I will make sure you watch your family die before I kill you. Do you understand? Tony's face went gray, but he nodded. I understand. Good. Now get out of my sight. Tony fled. Evelyn stood alone in the kitchen, her heart hammering. A mole. Someone close to her father, planning something catastrophic in the next 2 days. She pulled out her phone and texted Lucien. Need to talk. Now. Don't tell anyone. He responded 30 seconds later. East Garden, 5 minutes. Evelyn grabbed a jacket and slipped out through the side door, avoiding the security cameras she'd memorized the layout of when she was 13 and sneaking out to meet boys her father would never approve of. The garden was dark, smelled like wet earth and roses. Lucien emerged from the shadows near the fountain, his expression tense. What's wrong? He asked. Evelyn told him everything Tony had said. Lucien's face went hard. If there's really a mole, there is. It's the only explanation for how Volkov knew about the penthouse, about my movements, about everything. Then we do what your father said. We run the compartmentalized operation, feed different information to different people. That takes time we don't have. Volkov's planning something in the next 48 hours. Lucien was quiet for a moment. Who has the kind of access Tony described? Evelyn had been thinking about that since Tony left. Your department heads, my father's financial advisor, his head of security, maybe a few others. We trust all of them. We trusted Tony too. Lucien flinched. Fair point. So what do? We start looking, quietly. Check financial records, phone logs, anything that might show communication with Volkov's people. Lucien pulled out his phone. I'll have my tech team start digging, but we need to be careful. If the mole realizes we're onto them, they'll either run or accelerate whatever they're planning. Exactly. Evelyn hugged herself against the cold. This is insane. Someone we know, someone we work with every day, has been selling us out for months. People betray for lots of reasons. Money, fear, revenge. Lucien stepped closer. But whoever it is, we'll find them. And when we do, we end them. Without hesitation. Evelyn nodded. She was getting good at that, at making life or death decisions without flinching, at becoming exactly what this world required her to be. They stood in the dark garden, the fountain's soft gurgle the only sound, and Evelyn wondered how many more pieces of herself she'd have to sacrifice before this was over. Lucien's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his entire body went rigid. What? Evelyn asked. One of our warehouses in Brooklyn just exploded. 3 blocks are on fire. Evelyn's blood went cold. Volkov? Probably. Lucien was already moving toward the house. I need to coordinate emergency response, make sure it doesn't spread to civilian buildings. I'm coming with you. Evelyn, I'm not staying here while people die because of me. Lucien looked like he wanted to argue, but something in her expression stopped him. Fine, but you stay in the vehicle. No heroics. They raced to the SUV. By the time they reached Brooklyn, the sky was orange with firelight. 3 warehouse buildings engulfed in flames, fire trucks battling an inferno that looked like it came straight from hell. Evelyn watched through the window as firefighters sprayed water that turned to steam before it even touched the flames. People were being evacuated from nearby apartment buildings, families stumbling into the street in pajamas, carrying children and pets and whatever they could grab. This was what war looked like when it spilled into civilian territory. This was what happened when powerful men decided violence was the answer and everyone else became collateral damage. Lucien was on his phone, talking to someone about insurance claims and damage control, and how to spin this to the media as an industrial accident instead of what it really was, an act of terrorism. Evelyn's phone rang. Unknown number. She answered. "Enjoying the show?" Dmitry Volkov's voice, smooth as poison. "You're killing innocent people." "I'm sending a message. The DeLucas are finished. This is just the beginning." "What do you want?" "I want your father on his knees. I want his empire in ruins. I want the DeLuca name erased from this city, like it never existed." Volkov's voice dropped. "And I want you to watch it happen. Come after me then, leave everyone else out of it." "But where's the fun in that? Besides, you're not the one who matters. You're just the bait." Volkov chuckled. "Tell your father I'll be in touch. We have so much more to discuss." He hung up. Evelyn sat frozen, the phone still pressed to her ear, watching flames consume everything her family had built. Lucien touched her shoulder. "Who was that?" "Volkov. He says this is just the beginning. He's trying to scare us, make us panic. It's working." Lucien pulled her close. "Listen to me. We're going to find him. We're going to find the mole. And we're going to end this before it gets worse." "How can you be so sure?" "Because the alternative is losing everything. And I'm not willing to lose you." They sat in the SUV watching the city burn, wrapped around each other like survivors of a shipwreck clinging to floating wreckage. And Evelyn realized with terrifying clarity that this wasn't about territory or money or power anymore. This was personal. Volkov wanted to destroy her family not because of business, but because he could. Because violence was its own reward. Because men like him didn't need reasons, they just needed targets. And she'd made herself the biggest target of all. Dawn broke over Brooklyn in shades of gray and orange, smoke rising into pale sky like funeral pyres. The fires were finally contained, but 3 buildings were total losses, and the damage estimate was already climbing into the millions. Evelyn's phone buzzed with a text from her father. "Estate. Now. Family meeting." She showed Lucien. He nodded grimly. They drove back to Westchester in silence, both of them too exhausted for words. When they arrived, the sun was fully up, and the estate looked almost normal except for the armed guards walking the perimeter, and the sense of barely contained violence humming through the air like static electricity. Vincent was in his study with 4 other men, his financial advisor Marcus Brennan, his head of security James Walsh, and 2 of his longest-serving lieutenants, Sal Russo and David Chen. They all looked like they'd been up all night. Evelyn and Lucien entered, and the room fell silent. Vincent gestured to empty chairs. "Sit." They sat. "Brooklyn was a declaration of war," Vincent said without preamble. "Volkov's done playing games. He wants us dead, and he's willing to burn the city down to make it happen." "So what do we do?" Sal asked. He was older, maybe 60, with gray hair and scars that told stories he never talked about. "We hit back. Hard. Fast. Tonight." Vincent's eyes swept the room. "But first we need to talk about the elephant in the room. We have a leak. Someone in our organization has been feeding Volkov information for months." The temperature in the study dropped 10 degrees. "That's a serious accusation," Marcus said carefully. His face was pale, his expensive suit perfectly pressed despite the hour. "It's the only explanation," Lucien said. "Volkov knew about Evelyn's location, about our security protocols, about operational details that only a handful of people have access to." James Walsh shifted in his seat. "You're saying one of us is the traitor?" "I'm saying someone is. And we're going to find them." Vincent stood, moving to the bar to pour bourbon he didn't drink. "Starting now, everything is compartmentalized. No one gets information they don't absolutely need. All communications monitored, all movements tracked." "That's going to slow us down," David Chen said. "Make it harder to coordinate." "I don't care. We're bleeding from the inside, and until I know who's holding the knife, nobody gets trusted." The men exchanged glances. Evelyn watched their faces carefully, looking for tells. A flinch, a bead of sweat, anything that might signal guilt. Nothing. Either they were all innocent, or one of them was a very good liar. "What about the immediate threat?" Sal asked. "Volkov's going to keep hitting us. We need a response." "We're working on it," Lucian said. "We know his location changes constantly, but we're tracking his lieutenant's movements. Sooner or later, they'll lead us to him. And when they do, we end him, permanently." Vincent nodded. "In the meantime, I want all family assets locked down. Extra security on every property. No one moves without an armed escort." The meeting continued for another hour, strategies discussed and discarded, contingency plans drawn up. Evelyn sat quietly, watching and listening, cataloging every word, every gesture. When they finally broke, she pulled Lucien aside. "Did you notice Marcus?" she whispered. "What about him?" "He was sweating the whole meeting, and he kept looking at the door like he wanted to run." "Could be stress. We're all under pressure. Or it could be guilt." Lucien frowned. "Marcus has been with your father for 15 years. He's family. So was Tony, and look how that turned out." Lucien's expression darkened. "I'll have him watched, quietly. If he makes contact with anyone suspicious, we'll know." "Good." They separated, Lucien heading to coordinate security sweeps while Evelyn returned to her room. She was exhausted down to her bones, but sleep felt impossible. Instead, she sat at her old desk and opened her laptop, pulling up financial records for every DeLuca business operation. If there was a mole, there would be evidence. Money trails, communication patterns, something that didn't add up. She worked through the afternoon, eyes burning, drinking coffee that tasted like ash. Numbers blurred together, columns of data that should have told a story, but instead just looked like chaos. Around 6 p.m., her phone rang. "Lucien." "We found something," he said without preamble. "What?" Marcus made a call from a burner phone. "We traced it to a location in Queens Industrial District, same area where Volkov's been operating." Evelyn's heart hammered. "When?" 3 hours ago, right after the meeting ended." "Where is he now?" "Still at the estate. My men are watching him." "I'm coming down." "Evelyn, wait." But she was already moving, already running down the stairs toward the study where her father was still working. She burst through the door without knocking. Vincent looked up, startled. "Evie? It's Marcus. He's the mole." The words hung in the air like poison. Vincent's face went very still. "Explain." Evelyn told him about the burner phone, the call to Queens, the timing. When she finished, Vincent sat down slowly, like his legs had stopped working. "Marcus. For how long?" "We don't know yet, but Lucien's team is digging deeper." Vincent pressed his hands flat against the desk. For a long moment, he didn't speak. Then, "Bring him to me." "Papa, now." Evelyn texted Lucien. 5 minutes later, Marcus Brennan was being escorted into the study by 2 very large, very armed men. He looked confused, frightened, his expensive suit suddenly making him look like a child playing dress-up. "Vincent? What's going on?" Vincent didn't answer, just stared at the man who'd been his financial advisor, his friend, his trusted confidant for 15 years. "When did it start?" Vincent asked quietly. Marcus's confusion deepened. "When did what start?" "Don't!" Vincent's voice cracked like a whip. "Don't insult me by pretending you don't know what I'm talking about." Understanding dawned on Marcus's face. Then fear. "Vincent, I can explain." "Then explain. Explain why you've been selling us out to Dmitry Volkov. Explain why 3 of my men are dead. Explain why my daughter nearly died on a pier in Red Hook because you gave away her location." Marcus's legs buckled. The guards caught him, holding him upright. "He threatened my son," Marcus whispered. "My grandson. Said he'd kill them both if I didn't cooperate." "So you chose them over us?" "I chose my family. Wouldn't you have done the same?" Vincent stood, walked around the desk, and hit Marcus across the face hard enough to split his lip. "My family is your family. That's what loyalty means. That's what you swore when you took this job." Marcus spat blood. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. But they're all I have left. My wife is dead. My son is all—" "Your son is dead too." The room went silent. Marcus stared. What? Volkov killed him 3 hours ago, put 2 bullets in his head and dumped the body in the East River. Vincent's voice was flat, emotionless. We found him 20 minutes ago. Didn't you wonder why he wasn't answering your calls? Marcus made a sound like an animal dying. His knees gave out and he collapsed, the guards still holding him up by his arms. No, he promised. He said if I cooperated. He lied, and you were stupid enough to believe him. Marcus wept openly, his whole body shaking with sobs that sounded like they were tearing him apart from the inside. Evelyn felt something cold settle in her stomach. This man had betrayed them, had gotten people killed, had nearly destroyed everything. But he'd done it to save his son, and his son had died anyway. There was no winning in this world, no good choices, just varying degrees of loss. Vincent pulled a gun from his desk drawer. You have one chance to make this right. Tell me everything you told Volkov, every detail, every plan, every operation. Marcus looked up, tears streaming down his face. And then what? You'll kill me anyway. Yes, but I'll make it quick, or you can refuse and I'll make it last days. Marcus told them everything. How Volkov had approached him 6 months ago. How he'd resisted at first, but Volkov had sent him photos of his son, at work, at home, with his own son. How Marcus had started small, feeding minor information, convincing himself it wouldn't really matter. How it had escalated until he was giving Volkov access to security protocols, financial records, personal details about the DeLuca family. And how 3 days ago he'd told Volkov that Evelyn was back, that she was staying at a specific penthouse, that she represented the family's future. He said if I gave him Evelyn, he'd leave my son alone, Marcus whispered. He said that was the end game. Get rid of her, and the DeLucas would collapse from within. He said I'd be protecting my family. But instead you helped him kill them, Vincent said. Marcus nodded, still crying. Vincent raised the gun. Wait, Evelyn said. Everyone turned to look at her. He knows Volkov's plans, his operations, where he's hiding. Evelyn stepped forward. We can use that. Evie, Marcus wants his son's death to mean something. Let him help us end this. Then, she swallowed hard. Then you do what needs to be done. Vincent looked at Marcus. You willing to help us? Marcus wiped his face with shaking hands. What choice do I have? None. But I'm asking anyway. Yes, I'll help. His voice broke again. Just let me see my grandson one more time. Let me say goodbye. No, Vincent said flatly. You lost that privilege when you betrayed us. Now talk. Where is Volkov? Marcus told them. A warehouse in Long Island City, heavily guarded. Volkov moved locations every 48 hours, but Marcus knew his schedule, knew his security details, knew which routes he used and when. He's planning something for tomorrow night, Marcus said. Something big. He wouldn't tell me specifics, but he said it would end the DeLucas permanently. What kind of something? I don't know, I swear. But he's been bringing in more men, weapons, like he's preparing for war. Lucien and Vincent exchanged glances. We hit him first, Lucien said. Tonight, before he's ready. Agreed. Vincent lowered the gun. Marcus, you're going to call him. Tell him you have urgent information about our movements. Set up a meeting. He'll know it's a trap. Maybe, but he'll also think he can use it against us. Men like Volkov can't resist the opportunity to gloat. Vincent's smile was cold. And that's when we'll kill him. They spent the next 2 hours planning. Marcus made the call, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the phone. Volkov agreed to meet, 10 p.m. at his warehouse, just him and Marcus. Of course, it wouldn't be just him and Marcus. It would be Vincent, Lucien, Evelyn, and 20 heavily armed men ready to turn that warehouse into a slaughterhouse. As night fell over the estate, Evelyn suited up, dark clothes, boots, a Kevlar vest that felt heavier than it should. Lucien helped her check the fit, his hands gentle despite the violence they were preparing for. You don't have to come, he said quietly. Yes, I do. Evie. He threatened me, tried to kill me, burned our city trying to destroy us. Evelyn looked at him. I need to be there when this ends. Lucien studied her face for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, but you stay behind me, always. Always. They gathered in the garage, a small army in black tactical gear, checking weapons and communication equipment with the grim efficiency of people who knew exactly what they were walking into. Vincent approached Evelyn. If things go wrong, they won't. If they do, you run, you get out, and you don't look back. I'm not running anymore, Papa. Vincent's expression cracked, just for a second. He pulled her close, holding her the way he had when she was small and the world was simpler. I love you, Evie. Whatever happens tonight, I need you to know that. I love you too. They loaded into vehicles, 3 SUVs, dark and unmarked, blending into New York traffic like predators into shadows. The drive to Long Island City was tense, silent except for the occasional crackle of radios and the sound of magazines being checked one final time. When they arrived at the warehouse district, they killed the lights and approached on foot. The building Marcus had identified loomed ahead, 3 stories of rusted metal and broken windows, looking abandoned except for the cars parked in the loading bay and the men smoking cigarettes near the entrance. Lucien's hand signal split the team into 3 groups. One would enter through the front, one through the side, one through the back. Surround and overwhelm. Evelyn stayed with Lucien and Vincent as they moved toward the side entrance, their footsteps silent on broken asphalt. Closer. Closer. The door was unlocked. They slipped inside. The warehouse smelled like oil and rust and something organic rotting in the corners. Evelyn's night vision took a moment to adjust, shadows resolving into stacks of pallets and old machinery covered in dust. Voices echoed from deeper inside, Russian, laughing. Lucien's hand tightened on his weapon. He gestured, 30 feet ahead, up the stairs, 2nd floor. They climbed slowly, each step carefully placed to avoid creaking metal. At the top, a long catwalk stretched over the warehouse floor, and at the far end, Dmitry Volkov. He stood under a single hanging light, talking on his phone, Marcus kneeling on the floor beside him with a gun pressed to the back of his head. It was a trap. Evelyn opened her mouth to warn Lucien, but it was already too late. Floodlights exploded across the warehouse, blinding white light that turned night into day. Men appeared from every direction, behind crates, on catwalks, dropping from ceiling beams like spiders. At least 40 of them, all armed. All pointed at the 20 DeLuca men who'd just walked into a kill box. Volkov lowered his phone and smiled. "Welcome," he said, his voice echoing through the warehouse like thunder. "I've been waiting for you." Time stopped. Evelyn stood frozen on the catwalk, blinded by floodlights, surrounded by 40 guns pointed at her family, and understood with brutal clarity that this was how it ended. Not in triumph, not in victory, just in blood and metal and the terrible mathematics of violence where numbers always won. Volkov's smile widened. "Did you really think I wouldn't know you were coming? That Marcus calling me out of nowhere wasn't suspicious?" He kicked Marcus in the ribs. The older man curled into himself, whimpering. "He's been working for me all along, even the part where I killed his son. Very convincing, wasn't it, Marcus?" Marcus looked up, blood running from his nose. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. He has my grandson. He showed me photos. I had to... Shut up!" Volkov pressed the gun harder against Marcus's skull. "You've served your purpose." The gunshot was impossibly loud in the enclosed space. Marcus's body jerked once and went still, blood pooling on concrete. Evelyn heard someone scream, realized distantly it was her own voice. Vincent raised his weapon, but Volkov's men were already moving, swarming the catwalks, cutting off every exit. Lucien grabbed Evelyn and shoved her behind a support beam as gunfire erupted. Not the coordinated assault they'd planned, but desperate, chaotic survival. Muzzle flashes strobed the darkness. Bullets sparked off metal railings. Men screamed and fell, the sound of bodies hitting concrete from 20 feet up making wet thuds that Evelyn would hear in nightmares for the rest of her life. If she lived long enough to have nightmares. "We need to move!" Lucien shouted over the chaos. Blood ran down his face from a grazing shot that had missed his skull by inches. "Backstairs! Now!" Vincent was already running, laying down covering fire as his men fought and died around him. Evelyn ran with Lucien, her lungs burning, her ears ringing from gunfire that seemed to come from everywhere at once. They made it to the back stairwell. Lucien went first, weapon up, clearing each landing. Vincent followed, then Evelyn, her legs shaking so badly she almost fell twice. Behind them, the firefight was dying down. Not because the DeLuca men were winning, because they were losing. Screams cut off mid-breath. The gunfire became sporadic, one-sided. They burst out into a loading bay. 3 SUVs waited where they'd left them, engines still running. Go! Vincent shoved Evelyn toward the nearest vehicle. Both of you, get her out of here. I'm not leaving you, Evelyn said. You don't have a choice. Papa. Vincent grabbed her face with both hands, forcing her to look at him. You're what matters. You're the future. I'm just the past trying to hold on too long. He kissed her forehead hard. Now go. Live. Be better than I was. He shoved her toward Lucien and turned back toward the warehouse. No! Evelyn screamed, but Lucien was already dragging her to the SUV, his grip iron hard on her arm. Vincent disappeared back inside. Seconds later, an explosion ripped through the warehouse's second floor. Fire bloomed orange and gold, blowing out windows, sending metal debris spinning into the night like deadly confetti. Evelyn's knees buckled. Lucien caught her, hauled her into the vehicle. The driver, one of their few surviving men, hit the accelerator before the doors were even closed. They tore out of the loading bay as the entire building collapsed in on itself, flames reaching toward the sky like grasping hands. Vincent was still inside. Evelyn couldn't breathe, couldn't think, could only watch through the rear window as fire consumed everything, the heat so intense she could feel it through bulletproof glass. Turn around, she said. Her voice sounded far away, disconnected from her body. We have to go back. We can't. Lucien's hands were shaking, his face gray beneath the blood. He's gone, Evelyn. They're all gone. You don't know that. I know what an explosion like that does to human bodies. I know. His voice cracked. He chose this. He chose you. Evelyn turned away from the window and vomited onto the floor of the SUV. Her whole body shook with sobs that felt like they were tearing her apart from the inside. Lucien pulled her against him, his arms around her shoulders, and they clung to each other like survivors of a shipwreck as the driver navigated through industrial streets toward somewhere, anywhere, that wasn't a burning tomb. Where do we go? The driver asked. His name was Anton. Young, maybe 25, with a bullet wound in his shoulder that was bleeding through his jacket. The estate, Lucien said. We regroup, figure out who's left. But when they arrived 90 minutes later, the estate was burning too. Not the massive conflagration that had consumed the warehouse. Something more surgical. The main house was intact, but the security building was rubble, smoke rising from what had been the command center. Bodies littered the driveway. Vincent's guards, cut down before they'd even known they were under attack. Anton stopped the SUV at the gates. We can't go in there. We have to. Lucien's voice was hollow. We need to know if anyone survived. They approached on foot, weapons drawn, moving through smoke and shadows. The front door hung open, splintered like someone had hit it with a battering ram. Inside the house Evelyn had grown up in looked like a war zone. Furniture overturned, bullet holes in walls, blood on the marble floors her mother had picked out 20 years ago. They cleared each room methodically, found more bodies, staff, guards. People Evelyn had known her entire life, now just meat cooling on expensive carpets. In Vincent's study, they found Sal Russo and David Chen, both dead, both execution-style, bullets to the back of the head. Evelyn stood in the doorway and felt something inside her finally break beyond repair. Not shatter. Shattering implied there were still pieces that could be put back together. This was more complete, more final. The girl who'd run away 7 years ago to play house with Graham was dead. The woman who'd come back thinking she could be ruthless enough to survive this world was dead too. What was left was something new, something forged in fire and blood and loss so profound it had burned away everything soft, everything hopeful, everything human. Evelyn, Lucien touched her shoulder. We need to leave. If Volkov's men come back, let them come. Evelyn, she turned to face him. He killed everyone. My father, our people. Everyone who ever mattered to me is dead or dying. Her voice was eerily calm. So let them come. I'm done running. Lucien stared at her. What are you saying? I'm saying we end this. Tonight. Now. We find Volkov and we kill him, or we die trying. Evelyn walked to her father's desk, opened the bottom drawer, and pulled out a gun Vincent had kept there since she was a child. a .45 caliber pistol, heavy and deadly and loaded. I'm done being afraid, done being weak, done being anything except what he made me. And what's that? Evelyn checked the magazine, chambered around. A killer. Lucian's expression was unreadable. You're in shock. You're not thinking clearly. I'm thinking clearer than I ever have. Evelyn met his eyes. You can come with me or you can run, but I'm going after Volkov, and I'm not stopping until one of us is dead. For a long moment, Lucian said nothing. Then he pulled out his phone, made a call. It's me, he said when someone answered. I need everything you have on Volkov's movements in the last 6 hours. Every location, every contact, everything. A pause. I don't care what it costs, just get it done. He hung up and looked at Evelyn. If we're doing this, we do it smart, not suicidal. His hand found hers, squeezing hard enough to hurt. Your father died to keep you alive. Don't throw that away on a revenge mission. This isn't revenge, it's survival. As long as Volkov's breathing, we're dead anyway. He won't stop. Not now, not after tonight. Lucien nodded slowly. You're right. His phone buzzed. He checked it, then showed her the screen. An address in Brighton Beach, a private residence. Heavily guarded, but not a fortress. He's there right now, Lucian said. Celebrating, probably. Thinks he won. He did win. Evelyn's fingers tightened on the gun. Until he didn't. They left the burning estate with Anton, who was barely conscious from blood loss but refused to stay behind. 3 people in one damaged SUV, hunting a man protected by an army. The odds were impossible. Evelyn didn't care. Brighton Beach at 3 a.m. was quiet. The residential streets empty except for the occasional late-night dog walker or drunk stumbling home from a bar. The house Lucian's contact had identified sat on a corner lot. 2 stories, vinyl siding, utterly ordinary except for the luxury cars parked out front and the men smoking on the porch with visible weapons. 4 outside, Lucien said, surveying through binoculars. Probably a dozen more inside. So we can't go through the front. No, but there's a back entrance, kitchen door, less visible. Evelyn looked at him. You're planning this like we have a chance. We always have a chance, just not a good one. Lucian handed her a Kevlar vest. Put this on. She did. It felt heavy, restrictive, like armor or a coffin, she couldn't tell which. They approached from the alley behind the house, moving through shadows cast by streetlights filtered through tree branches. Anton stayed with the vehicle. He was too injured to fight, but he could drive if they needed a fast exit, if they survived long enough to need one. The kitchen door was locked. Lucien picked it in under 30 seconds, the soft click of tumblers falling barely audible. They slipped inside. The house smelled like cigarettes and vodka and expensive cologne. Voices drifted from the front rooms, men talking, laughing, celebrating victory. Lucien moved first, clearing the kitchen. Empty. They advanced into a hallway, still empty. The voices grew louder. At the end of the hall, a living room. 8 men sprawled on couches and chairs, drinking, smoking, weapons within easy reach but not in hand. And in the center, holding court like a king on his throne, Dmitry Volkov. He looked different than he had at the warehouse. Relaxed, triumphant. A man who'd won his war and was savoring the aftermath. Evelyn stepped into the room. Every head turned. Hands moved toward weapons. Don't! Evelyn's voice was steady, her gun pointed directly at Volkov's chest. You'll all die before you touch them. Behind her, Lucian had his weapon up, covering the room's other angles. Volkov's smile didn't waver. Miss DeLuca, I have to admit, I didn't expect to see you again. Thought you'd be dead or running by now. Disappointed? Intrigued. Volkov leaned back, utterly unconcerned by the gun pointed at him. You have impressive survival instincts. Your father must have been very proud. Was. Past tense, because you killed him. I killed a lot of people tonight. You'll have to be more specific. Evelyn's finger tightened on the trigger. I'm going to give you one chance. Call off your men. Walk outside with me. We end this between us. Nobody else dies. Volkov laughed. Why would I do that? I have 8 men in this room. A dozen more upstairs. And you? He gestured at her and Lucien. You have a death wish and a bodyguard who's clearly in love with you. Very romantic, very stupid. Last chance, Evelyn said. No. Volkov's smile turned cold. Last chance for you. Put down the gun. Walk out. I'll even give you a 10-minute head start before I send people after you. That's more mercy than your family ever showed anyone. Mercy. Evelyn felt something like laughter bubble up in her throat, bitter and dark. You want to talk about mercy? You killed 3 innocent men to send a message, burned down buildings with families inside, murdered my father and everyone I cared about because you wanted power you didn't earn. I took what was there for the taking. That's how this works. No, that's how you work, but I'm not like you. Evelyn lowered the gun slightly. I was willing to negotiate, to find a way we could both survive. But you wanted war, so that's what you get. She fired. Not at Volkov, at the light fixture above his head. The room plunged into darkness. Then everything happened at once. Lucien's weapon roared, muzzle flash illuminating men scrambling for guns. Return fire lit up the darkness like lightning. Evelyn dove behind a couch as bullets tore through upholstery, filling the air with feathers and foam. She came up firing, aiming for the muzzle flashes. Someone screamed. A body hit the floor. The room became a strobe-lit nightmare. Darkness punctuated by gunfire, the smell of powder and blood, shouts in Russian and English mixing into a wordless roar. Evelyn's gun clicked empty. She dropped it, grabbed a fallen weapon, kept firing. A man rushed her from the side. She turned too slow. He hit her like a linebacker, driving her into the wall hard enough to crack plaster. Stars exploded across her vision. His hands found her throat, squeezing. She couldn't breathe, couldn't see, couldn't... The pressure released. The man fell away, blood pouring from a gunshot wound in his temple. Lucien stood over her, his face grim. Move! They ran toward the back of the house as more men poured down the stairs, drawn by gunfire. The kitchen, the door. Almost there. Something hit Evelyn from behind, driving her to the floor. She rolled, lashing out with her feet. Connected with someone's knee. They went down cursing. She scrambled up, grabbed a kitchen knife from the counter, and drove it into the man's shoulder when he tried to grab her again. He screamed. She twisted the blade and ran. Outside, the night air hit her like a slap. Lucien was right behind her, blood streaming from a cut on his arm. They sprinted for the alley where Anton waited. The SUV's engine was already running. They dove inside. Anton floored it, tires squealing on asphalt. Behind them, men poured out of the house, firing at the retreating vehicle. Bullets sparked off metal. The rear window shattered, but they were moving, accelerating, putting distance between themselves and the battlefield they'd just walked out of. Did you get him? Anton gasped. Did you kill Volkov? Evelyn looked at Lucien. Lucien shook his head. No, Evelyn said. We didn't. They'd wounded his operation, killed maybe 6 or 7 of his men. But Volkov himself was still alive, still dangerous, still hunting them. Nothing had changed except now they'd used their last element of surprise. Anton drove aimlessly through Brooklyn, taking random turns, making sure they weren't followed. Eventually, he pulled into a 24-hour parking garage in Williamsburg and killed the engine. What now? He asked. Evelyn stared at her hands. They were shaking, covered in blood, some hers, some not. She'd killed at least 3 men tonight, maybe more. Had stopped counting after the second one because counting made it real, and she couldn't afford for it to be real yet. Now we disappear, Lucien said quietly. We take what money we can access, get out of the city, start over somewhere else. No, Evelyn's voice was flat. We finish this. Evelyn, he killed my father, killed everyone. He's not going to stop just because we run. He'll keep coming, keep hunting. We'll spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. She turned to face Lucien. I'm done running. I told you that already. Then what do you suggest? We just lost a small war. We have no resources, no backup, no plan. We have something better than resources. Evelyn pulled out her phone, opened her contacts, found a name she'd added years ago and never deleted. We have information he wants more than he wants us dead. She made the call. It rang 4 times. Then Volkov answered, his voice tight with barely controlled rage. Calling to beg for your life?
Call was in.
Calling to make a trade, Evelyn said. Me for Lucien. Face to face. No armies, no backup, just you and me. Volkov was quiet for a moment. Why would I agree to that? Because you want to look me in the eyes when you kill me. Want to make me beg. Want to prove you won. Evelyn's voice was steady despite her hammering heart. And because if you don't agree, I disappear. Take everything I know about your operation, the corruption, the murders, the money laundering, and give it to the FBI. You'll spend the rest of your life in a federal prison being someone's property. You're bluffing. Try me. Another pause, longer this time. Where? Volkov finally said. Coney Island, the boardwalk, 1 hour. You bring 5 men, I bring 2. We meet in the middle. And then? And then we end this, one way or another. Volkov chuckled. You have courage, I'll give you that. Stupid courage, but courage nonetheless. He hung up. Lucien stared at her. What the hell are you doing? Finishing it? By getting yourself killed? Maybe, or maybe I get lucky. Evelyn checked her remaining ammunition. 1 magazine, 14 rounds. Either way, it ends tonight. This is insane. Everything about this is insane. Has been since the moment I signed those divorce papers. Evelyn met his eyes. But I meant what I said earlier. I'm done being afraid. Done letting men like Volkov or Graham or anyone else tell me who I'm supposed to be. Lucien grabbed her shoulders. Then let me come with you. Let me... No, you're staying here with Anton. Evelyn, if I don't come back, you run. You take whatever money's left and you disappear and you live. Her hand came up, touching his face. Promise me. I can't. Promise me, Lucien. His jaw worked. Finally, he nodded. I promise. She kissed him. Long and deep and desperate, pouring everything she couldn't say into that single contact. Love and fear and goodbye and I'm sorry and thank you for waiting. When they broke apart, both of them were crying. I love you, she whispered. I love you too, which is why I'm not letting you do this alone. Before Evelyn could argue, he was already moving, checking his own weapon, his jaw set with that stubborn determination she'd fallen in love with when they were teenagers and the world was simpler. Fine, she said, but you stay behind me. If shooting starts, you run. Not a chance. Lucien, we do this together or not at all. That's the deal. Evelyn looked at him. This man who'd waited 7 years for her, who'd protected her, who'd never once asked her to be anything except herself, and felt her heart break and heal simultaneously. Together, she agreed. They drove to Coney Island with Anton, who was fading in and out of consciousness from blood loss. The boardwalk at 4 a.m. was deserted, just empty shops and closed carnival rides creaking in the salt wind off the ocean. Volkov was already there, standing near the old Wonder Wheel with 5 men flanking him, all armed, all ready. Evelyn and Lucien approached slowly, their weapons visible but not raised. 50 feet separated them, then 40, 30. 20 feet away, Volkov raised a hand. They stopped. Miss DeLuca, Volkov said. Still alive. Remarkable. You too, for now. Big words from someone who's outnumbered 3-1. Numbers don't matter if you're the one who's bleeding. Evelyn's hand stayed near her weapon. You wanted this city. Wanted to erase the DeLuca name. Congratulations. You won. My father's dead. Our operation is destroyed. There's nothing left. Then why are you here? Because winning isn't enough for men like you. You need us to acknowledge it, to bow down and admit you're superior. Evelyn stepped closer. So here I am, acknowledging it. You beat us. You're smarter, more ruthless, more willing to burn everything down to get what you want. Volkov's expression shifted slightly, suspicion mixing with satisfaction. But here's the thing about burning everything down, Evelyn continued. Sometimes the fire spreads. Sometimes it consumes the person who started it. She pulled something from her jacket, not a weapon, a small recording device. I've been recording every conversation we've had, every threat, every admission. I've documented your operations, your crimes, your network, and if I don't check in with my lawyer in... She glanced at her watch. 30 minutes, all of that goes to the FBI, the DEA, the IRS, every federal agency that's wanted to nail you for years. Volkov's smile vanished. You're bluffing. Am I? You willing to bet your freedom on that? I could kill you right now. Take that recording. And my lawyer still sends the files. That's how insurance policies work. Evelyn's voice was cold. But I'm willing to make a trade. The recording's for safe passage. You let me and Lucien walk away, go wherever we want, and you never come after us. In exchange, everything I have on you disappears. Volkov considered this. And I'm supposed to trust you? No more than I trust you, but we're both practical people. This war has cost us both too much. I'm offering you a way to end it without losing everything. Or I could just kill you and take my chances with the FBI. You could, but federal prosecutors don't need my recordings to build a case. They just need a starting point, and I've given them a very detailed map. Evelyn stepped closer still, close enough to see Volkov's eyes in the dim light. You're a businessman, so calculate the risk. Is killing me worth spending the rest of your life in prison? Or is letting me walk away worth keeping your empire? The ocean crashed against the beach behind them. The wonder wheel creaked in the wind. Volkov's hand moved toward his weapon. Lucien's weapon came up, aimed at Volkov's head. Don't, Lucien said quietly. Your men might kill us, but you'll be dead before we hit the ground. Is that worth it? Volkov froze. For a long moment, nobody moved. The 6 armed men, Evelyn, Lucien, all balanced on the knife's edge between violence and survival. Then Volkov started laughing. You're insane, he said. Both of you, completely insane. But he lowered his hand. Fine. You want to walk away? Walk. Take your recordings, leave the city, and pray I never see your face again. That's the deal? That's the deal. Volkov's smile returned, cold and empty. But understand something, Miss DeLuca. This isn't mercy. This is me deciding you're not worth the trouble. You're nothing now. No family, no empire. Just 2 survivors with blood on their hands and nowhere to call home. I can live with that, Evelyn said. She turned and walked away, Lucien beside her, both of them expecting bullets in their backs with every step. None came. They made it to the SUV where Anton waited, got in, drove away. Behind them, Volkov and his men disappeared into the darkness, like smoke dissolving into night. Evelyn waited until they were 10 blocks away before she started shaking. Then she couldn't stop. Her whole body trembled like she was freezing, like something inside her had finally broken loose and wouldn't be contained anymore. Lucien pulled the SUV over and held her while she fell apart, while 7 years of running and fighting and losing everything she'd ever cared about finally caught up with her all at once. She cried for her father, for the 3 men who died because she'd trusted Tony, for Marcus and his son, and the terrible mathematics of loyalty and betrayal. For the girl she'd been, who'd thought normal was possible, and the woman she'd become who knew it never was. When the tears finally stopped, she felt hollow, scraped clean, empty in a way that wasn't entirely bad. Where do we go? Lucien asked quietly. Evelyn wiped her eyes. Somewhere far, somewhere warm, somewhere nobody knows who we are. That sounds nice? It sounds impossible. Maybe. Lucien's hand found hers. But we've done impossible before. They drove Anton to a hospital, dropped him at the emergency entrance, and left before anyone could ask questions. Then they abandoned the bullet-riddled SUV in Queens and bought a used sedan with cash from a 24-hour lot that didn't ask for ID. By the time the sun rose over Manhattan, they were already on I-95 heading south, leaving the city and everything it contained behind them. Evelyn watched it disappear in the side mirror, the skyline shrinking, the buildings becoming abstract shapes, the whole violent, beautiful nightmare of her life fading into memory. Regrets? Lucien asked. Thousands. Evelyn leaned her head against his shoulder. But not about this. Not about surviving. They drove for 3 days, stopping only for gas and food and brief, uncomfortable sleep in roadside motels. By the time they reached South Carolina, Evelyn had ditched her phone, cut her hair short, and started using the fake ID Lucien had pulled from an emergency cache. Her name was Emily Brennan now. His was Lucas Moore. They were nobody special, just 2 people running from something they didn't talk about. They found a small coastal town called Beaufort, sleepy, quiet, the kind of place where newcomers were noted but not questioned. Rented a cottage 3 blocks from the water. Paid 6 months up front in cash. The first week, Evelyn barely left the bedroom. Just slept and woke and slept again, her body finally crashing after running on adrenaline for so long. The second week, she started walking on the beach. Let salt air and sunshine begin to scour away the smell of gunpowder and blood that seemed permanently embedded in her skin. The third week, she realized she was pregnant. The test was positive. Unmistakably, terrifyingly. She sat on the bathroom floor of their rented cottage and stared at the little plastic stick for 20 minutes before Lucian found her. Evelyn? He crouched beside her, saw the test. His expression went through shock to understanding to something that might have been joy. How long? I don't know. Maybe, she calculated backwards. Maybe from before everything went to hell. And you want? He stopped, started again. What do you want? Evelyn looked at him. This man who'd given up everything to run away with her, who'd watched his friends die and his world burn and never once blamed her for it. I want to keep it, she whispered. Is that insane after everything, after what we've done? No. Lucian pulled her close. It's hope, and we could use some hope. 7 months later, Evelyn gave birth to a daughter in a small hospital where nobody asked too many questions about their past or their lack of insurance. The baby had Lucian's dark eyes and Evelyn's determined chin and lungs that could wake the dead. They named her Sophia, not after anyone, not carrying the weight of family legacy or obligation or expectation, just a name they both liked. A fresh start written in 10 tiny fingers and 10 tiny toes, and a future that hadn't been decided before she even drew her first breath. Evelyn held her daughter and cried for everything she'd lost and everything she'd gained in the strange, terrible mathematics that had traded one life for another. 6 months after that, sitting on their porch watching Sophia sleep in her bassinet, while the ocean whispered in the distance, Evelyn finally told Lucian the truth she'd been carrying since that night on the Coney Island boardwalk. I lied to Volkov, she said. There were no recordings, no insurance policy, no lawyer with files ready to send to the FBI. Lucian turned to look at her. What? I was bluffing, the whole thing. I had nothing except desperation and the hope he'd believe me. Evelyn's hand tightened on her coffee cup. If he'd called my bluff, we'd both be dead. Lucian was quiet for a long moment. Then he laughed. Not the bitter, dark sound of someone broken, something lighter, almost genuine. You're terrifying, you know that? I know. Remind me never to play poker with you. I'll remind you every day. They sat in comfortable silence, watching their daughter sleep, watching the sun set over water that stretched to a horizon they'd never reach. 2 years passed. Evelyn got a job managing a small restaurant. Nothing fancy, just a family place that served fried shrimp and hush puppies to tourists. She was good at it. Turned out years of watching her father run a criminal empire translated surprisingly well to inventory management and staff scheduling. Lucian worked construction. Came home with calloused hands and sore muscles and no blood on his clothes. Found something like peace in the simple physicality of building things instead of destroying them. Sophia grew, learned to walk, started talking, called Lucian daddy and Evelyn mama, without knowing those words carried the weight of sacrifice and survival and choices made in darkness. They were happy, or something close to it. The kind of happiness that came with scar tissue and phantom pain, and nights when Evelyn woke up screaming from dreams about burning warehouses and her father's face disappearing into flames. On those nights, Lucian would hold her until the shaking stopped, until she remembered where she was, who she'd become. On Sophia's 3rd birthday, Evelyn got a letter, no return address. Postmarked from Manhattan. Inside, a single newspaper clipping. The headline read, Russian businessman Dmitry Volkov found dead in apparent mob hit. The article was brief. Volkov had been killed in his Brighton Beach home. Multiple gunshot wounds, execution style. Police suspected rival criminal organizations but had no leads. There was a note attached. 3 words in handwriting she recognized despite years apart. Consider it settled. Anton. Evelyn burned the letter and the clipping in their backyard fire pit, watching paper curl and blacken and turn to ash. What was that? Lucian asked from the porch. The past, Evelyn said, making sure it stays there. She didn't tell him about the clipping, didn't tell him that somewhere in New York, Anton, who'd survived his wounds and disappeared into the machinery of the city, had finished what they'd started. Some debts got paid in blood, some got paid in time. Some got paid by people you'd saved without meaning to, who remembered mercy when everyone else only saw weakness. 3 years became 5. 5 became 7. Sophia started first grade, made friends, brought home drawings of stick figure families that had no idea what those stick figures had done to earn their peaceful existence. On the 7th anniversary of the night Evelyn had walked out of her suburban marriage and back into her family's world, she sat on the porch with Lucien watching their daughter play in the yard. "Do you ever think about going back?" Lucien asked. "To New York? To that life?" Evelyn considered the question. "Sometimes, when I'm balancing the restaurant's books and thinking about how we could increase profit margins by 3% with better supplier relationships. Or when Sophia asks why she doesn't have grandparents, and I have to lie about them being dead instead of explaining they died in a gang war I helped start." That's not an answer. "No, I don't think about going back." Evelyn turned to look at him. "That life destroyed everyone who touched it. My father, Tony, Marcus, Graham in his own pathetic way. The only reason we survived was because we ran. Do you regret running?" "I regret that running was necessary, but I don't regret the result." Lucien's hand found hers. "Me neither." Sophia ran up to the porch, grass-stained and breathless. "Mama, can we go to the beach?" Evelyn smiled. "After dinner." "Promise?" "Promise." Sophia ran off to play again, already forgetting the question, already living in a moment that didn't require guarantees or blood oaths or anything more binding than a mother's word. That night, after Sophia was asleep and the dishes were done, and the world was quiet except for ocean waves and distant music from the bar 3 blocks over, Evelyn stood in their small bathroom and looked at herself in the mirror. Same face, different eyes. The woman looking back at her had killed people, had watched her father die, had burned down one life to build another from the ashes, but she'd also built something good, something clean, something that didn't require violence to sustain. She thought about Graham, who'd thrown her away believing she was nothing, wondered if he ever thought about the quiet housewife he'd discarded, wondered if he'd read about the DeLuca Empire's collapse and connected the dots. Probably not. Men like Graham never looked deep enough to see the truth beneath the surface. She thought about her father, who'd taught her to be ruthless but died protecting her right to be something else, who'd given her a legacy of blood and power, but also given her permission to walk away from it. She thought about the 3 men who'd died because she'd trusted Tony, about Marcus and his son, about all the casualties of a war nobody won. And she thought about Sophia, sleeping in the next room, dreaming innocent dreams about playground games and cartoon characters, about the life Evelyn and Lucien had built for her, quiet, safe, boring in the best possible way. Was it enough? This small existence in a small town with small ambitions? Evelyn didn't know, but it was real. And it was hers. And nobody could take it from her because nobody knew it existed. That would have to be enough. She turned off the light and went to bed, where Lucien already slept, his breathing soft and steady. Tomorrow, she'd wake up early and make Sophia pancakes shaped like dinosaurs. She'd go to work and handle the lunch rush and probably have to fire the dishwasher who kept showing up drunk. She'd come home tired and satisfied by accomplishments that wouldn't change the world but would keep her corner of it running smoothly. It wasn't the life she'd been born into. It wasn't the life she'd tried to build with Graham. It was the life she'd earned through blood and fire and the terrible cost of choosing herself over legacy. And lying there in the dark, listening to the ocean and Lucien's breathing and the house settling around them, Evelyn finally understood what her mother had known all those years ago. Power wasn't about controlling empires or commanding armies or making people fear you. Power was choosing your own life and accepting the cost of that choice. Power was walking away from everything you were supposed to be and becoming something better. Power was looking at the woman in the mirror, scarred, haunted, still standing, and not flinching from what you saw. 7 years ago, Evelyn Vale had sat alone with a melting cake, waiting for a husband who didn't love her, living a life that wasn't hers. Tonight, Evelyn Brennan, the name she'd chosen, the identity she'd built, lay in bed with a man who'd waited 7 years for her to come home and a daughter who would never know the weight of empire or the cost of loyalty or the terrible mathematics of survival. Tomorrow, she'd wake up and do it all again. And the day after that. And the day after that. Until the past was so distant it felt like it had happened to someone else. Until the scars faded enough that she could pretend they'd never existed. Until the woman she'd been and the woman she'd become finally merged into something that could look at itself without shame or regret. That was the real victory. Not surviving, not escaping, not even building a new life. Just learning to live with who she'd had to become to earn the right to be free. Outside, the ocean kept whispering its ancient promises about time and tide and the way all things eventually return to salt and sand and silence. Inside, Evelyn closed her eyes and let the darkness take her, knowing that when she woke, she'd still be here. Still alive, still choosing, still herself. And that, finally, was enough.